Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
Listen to the first story all the way to the end.
After the separation, the husband accepted it, but he couldn't forget it. Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. All I can say, Jack, is that I won't wait for you. If you do, don't expect me to be here when you get home. I sat across the table from Betty and made a decision that changed my life. Your choice, Betty. So be it, I said, then stood up from the table and walked away, leaving her sitting there. 24 hours later, I signed the papers, and 2 days after that, I was on a Greyhound bus heading to Fort Knox, Kentucky. I remembered that I hadn't told my mom where I left the car keys. So, when the bus stopped in Marysville to pick up passengers, I called home to tell my mother where to find them. While I was talking to her on the phone, she asked, "Why did you leave without saying goodbye to Betty? The poor girl was with us and crying because you just got up and left." I didn't have to say goodbye to her. She already said goodbye to me, I replied. The look on her face and the tone of her voice when she looked me in the eyes and told me she wouldn't wait was as clear as saying goodbye. I'm sure you misunderstood her, Jack. I don't think so, Mom. We need to go, the bus is getting ready to leave. During the trip to Fort Knox, I thought about what brought me to that gray bus seat. At school, I was an indifferent student. I wasn't stupid, I just didn't like school. I didn't see the point in some of the things they tried to put into my head, so I mostly ignored them. I did just enough to maintain a GPA that allowed me to play football, baseball, and basketball. I wasn't particularly good at any of these sports, just average or maybe a little above average. I was good enough to be a starter on the collegiate team, and I had my moments, but I never reached a level where I could even remotely consider the pros. Hell, I was never at the level to qualify for an athletic scholarship. I played because I loved to play, not because I expected anything from it other than the pure enjoyment of the game. Betty Gifford and I started dating in 10th grade. I had known her since 5th grade, but we were only classmates who knew each other. She was a beautiful girl, but the truth was, I thought she was too far out of my league and never worked up the courage to approach her. She was the daughter of the richest man in the city, and I was the son of a factory foreman. There was nothing wrong with being a foreman in a factory, we were just in completely different social circles. She swam in the pool at the country club, and I swam in the pool at the YMCA. She went to dinner with her parents at the Elgin Quinn Club or the Imperial Dining Club. When I went out with my parents, it was to the Village Inn on Wilcox or the Denny's on Perry Street. Her parents gave her a new Audi and a couple of gas credit cards when she got her driver's license. My parents and grandparents got together and gave me a 10-year-old Chevy pickup truck and told me I needed to get a part-time job to pay for insurance, license plates, and gas. Socially, we were like oil and water, and everyone knows the two don't mix. I doubt I would ever have gone near her if she hadn't come to me. It was a Thursday, and I was in the school cafeteria at lunchtime when Betty walked up to my table and asked if she could join me. Of course, I said yes, and she sat down. She got straight to the point. Who are you going to take to the dance tomorrow night? I wasn't planning on going, but you were planning on going before you and Judy broke up, right? Judy was my ex-girlfriend. We had dated for a little over 9 months. She canceled our date because relatives were visiting from out of town and she needed to stay home and spend time with them. I found out that she canceled our date to go out with another guy, and last Wednesday, I pretty publicly called her a cheater and broke up with her. As Betty suggested, Judy was supposed to be my date to the dance. With Judy gone, I intended to skip the dance. I told Betty this, and then she said, I really wanted to go to this dance, but I need a date, and you're the only guy I know who isn't already taken. Do you need a companion? What about your boyfriend? Why don't you go with Roger? I thought you knew. I know that the guy you broke up with Judy over was Roger. I did the same thing to him that you did to Judy. Do you really want to go to the dance with me, since I'm here asking? There's an old saying, don't look a gift horse in the mouth, I said with a smile. So, I'll be glad to be your companion. We had a great time, although Roger and Judy came to the dance alone and shot dirty looks at Betty and me the entire evening. They hadn't danced together, not once, and seemed to stay as far away from each other as possible. This amused Betty and me terribly. As I walked Betty to her door, she thanked me for taking her, said she had a great time, and kissed me on the cheek. I was on cloud nine as I walked back to my car. I considered that night a gift from the gods, but I still thought that Betty was too far out of my league. So when I woke up on Saturday morning, I continued to live my life. A week passed, and on Friday, I was in the dining room again when Betty came to my table and sat down. Once again, she got straight to the point. Why didn't you call me? Why did I have to call you? Are you saying you didn't enjoy our date the night of the dance? Of course not, I replied. I had a great time. Then why didn't you call me to set up a second date? If she could be straightforward and frank, then so could I. I didn't think you were expecting this. I thought the only reason we met that night was that you needed someone to take you to the dance, and I was the only one available. In fact, as far as I remember, your exact words were, I need a companion, and you are the only guy I know who isn't already taken. I thought that I was just a means to an end. It never occurred to me that you might expect something more. When a girl kisses a guy goodbye after thanking him for a good time, she expects to be invited back. What are you doing tonight? No plans. Pick me up at 6 o'clock. I picked her up that night at 6 o'clock, and thus began a relationship that lasted until graduation and the night she said she wouldn't wait for me. Like any relationship, there were ups and downs, but the UPS far outweighed the downs. Betty was 3 months older than me, and she was already talking about getting married right after college. Hey, I was for it, but I knew it wouldn't work. First, instead of going to a small college in our hometown, she was going to a college in another state, 900 miles from home. It was far enough away that it was almost impossible to come home for the weekend. We would probably only see each other on holidays and other breaks. Add to this the fact that there was no way a girl like Betty wouldn't attract attention and be surrounded by admirers, and it was inevitable that she would date and perhaps meet someone she liked better than Jack Bailey. And, of course, her parents would like it more. I shouldn't have said that. I think her mother loved me, but her father made it clear when we first met that he considered me completely unsuitable for his daughter. And if I'm honest with myself, I sometimes thought that was my biggest attraction to Betty, the fact that she was with me to spite him. Honestly, even though I wished it had been different, I didn't see a future for Betty and me. Graduation came, and for Betty, it meant summer break before going to college. But for me, it meant getting a full-time job and starting my adult life. I discovered that there were plenty of jobs available for recent high school graduates. Unfortunately, they were all low-paid and dead-end: McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, and at least 15 gas station or store clerk jobs. After 3 weeks of searching and getting nowhere, I was having lunch with Uncle Bob and complaining about the lack of a decent job when he said, "Why don't you join the military? You could learn a trade and take advantage of their educational benefits. Who knows, you might even like it enough to decide to make it your career." That same day, I spoke with an Army recruiter who explained to me what the Army could do for me and what my options were. I thanked him for his time and left his office to think about it. I discussed this with my father since he was a veteran, and after talking with him and thinking about it for a long time, I decided to do it. The next day, I had a date with Betty. After the movie, we went to the Village Inn for cake and coffee. I told her everything as it was. My job prospects are terrible, and I don't see how I can earn enough to support us when we get married. I explained what the Army could do for me. You'll basically be out for the next 4 years. By the time you graduate, my contract will be up, and I'll be back home, hoping to find a decent job that can support us. But we won't see each other for 3 years. Sure, we'll see each other. I'll have 30 days off every year, and I can get other days off. I can get 3 days off, and they have something called route delay, which gives you extra time to go from one post to another. I think we'll see each other as much as we would if I worked at Burger King and waited for you to come home for the weekend or holidays. But if I did that, I wouldn't get ahead and still couldn't provide for us as a married couple. Let your father get you a job at the factory. He can't. Business is slow there right now, and there may be layoffs soon. Well, I don't like it, Jack. I don't want you to do it. I have to do this, Betty. It's the only way I see to get what I need to give us some kind of future. All I can say, Jack, is that I won't wait for you. If you do, don't expect me to be here when you get home. As soon as she said that, I realized that even if I stayed, we still had no future. I mean, what the hell? The girl who claimed to love me so much that she couldn't live without me was now plainly telling me not to expect her to wait for me. It certainly showed a lot of love. I got off the bus and followed the signs directing recruits where to go. 2 hours later, 6 others and I were in a truck heading to Fort Knox. I was in pretty good physical shape from the sports I played, so the physical part of the workout was easy for me. Where I didn't shine was in all the tests designed to determine where I fit best in the Army. I should have paid more attention in school to subjects that I considered useless in real life. Initial tests showed the Army didn't think I was cut out for combat, so I was sent to 8 weeks of basic training instead of the 16-week program that would have included the Advanced Infantry Training course. In short, I found myself assigned to the Quartermaster Corps. I had a 10-day delay on my route when I left Knox bound for Fort Lee in Virginia. Of course, I went home to visit my mom. She said I should call Betty since I was home, but I told her I didn't want to hurt myself that much. I spent the first 2 days at home with my parents, but on the third day, I went out to meet old friends. I met up with a few, and since it was Saturday night, we decided to go to the dance at the VFW. Their Saturday dances were open to anyone who could pay the $20 entrance fee, and they usually had pretty good bands. The entry fee was waived for unmarried girls, so there were usually plenty of girls to dance with. As you might have guessed, one of the first girls I saw when I walked in was Betty. I was surprised to see her there because I expected her to be at school. I found out later that she was on a semester break. She was on the dance floor with Norm Taylor. It was predictable. Taylor was an arrogant jerk, and I could never stand him. We even fought a few times, the last time being when he tried to woo Betty while she was dating me. I don't think Betty saw me come in. If she did, she would have noticed the expression of disgust on my face. My group found an empty table, and we sat down, starting to look around the place for girls. I saw a few that I knew. One of them was Nancy Newbert, and she waved to me. I waved back and decided to ask her to dance when the next tune started. The song ended, and I saw Betty and Taylor holding hands and walking toward a booth on the north wall. They sat down and held hands on the table. Well, at least she was honest when she said she wouldn't wait. The next tune was a waltz, and I approached Nancy and asked her to dance. She agreed. On my second lap around the dance floor, as I passed Betty's booth, I saw her look up. Our eyes met, and her face lost all color as we walked past the booth. Nancy didn't notice Betty's expression, but she did notice that I ignored Betty. I didn't smile at her when she looked at me, as I usually did with friends. Nancy said, "I heard that you broke up with Betty, but no one knows why. No one knows if it's just a fight that you'll work out and get back together or not. We won't get back together. Okay, maybe now I'll have a chance." A chance? Why the hell would you want a chance with me? Don't underestimate yourself, Jack. Lots of girls would love to have a chance with you. You just didn't notice because you were so into Betty. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. I'm a girl who gets what she wants, Jack. There's an empty table over there, she pointed to it. I'll leave my group if you leave yours. Jack is agile. Jack is fast. Jack took advantage of the opportunity. We spent the next 2 hours dancing, talking, and sipping our drinks. From where we sat, I could see Betty, and she could see Nancy and me. I noticed that when she wasn't dancing with Taylor, she was looking in our direction. I don't know if Taylor knew about this since his back was turned to us. Nancy and I had just finished two-stepping. After I walked her back to our table, I left her to go to the men's room. After I finished, I walked out into the hallway and saw Betty standing there, waiting for me. As usual, she got straight to the point. Why didn't you call me? Why didn't you let me know you were back home? Why should I bother? You told me you wouldn't wait, and I noticed you were at least honest about it. But with Taylor, the guy I beat up because he called you, it's just a date, Jack. There's nothing between us. Judging by the way you were dancing when I walked in and the way you were holding hands in the booth, there's no way you could prove that to me. Regardless, I need to get back to my date. She's not your date. She got here hours before you. That was then. This is now. I started to walk away, and she said, "Call me, Jack. Please." Maybe, I said over my shoulder. And maybe not, I said to myself while going back to Nancy. I thought it was clear that Betty wanted to make peace, but it was also clear that she wasn't going to sit around while I was gone. I didn't see the point in setting myself up for failure, if you know what I mean. As I sat down at the table, Nancy said, I saw Betty intercept you. Is she trying to interfere in my case? It's your business. I already told you, honey. I go after what I want, and I want you. I've always been honest with myself, and I knew I wasn't that special, so Nancy's interest in me seemed strange. But she was a cute girl, and I wasn't dumb, so of course I decided to take advantage of it. We spent another half-hour dancing, and then the last call was announced, so we got ready to leave. While we were walking out together, I happened to see the expression on Betty's face. She was clearly unhappy. We stopped at the Waffle House for coffee and an early breakfast. We made plans for the next day, and then I walked her home. I received a nice kiss as I walked her to the door, and I drove home in a pretty good mood. My date with Nancy included dinner and a movie, followed by pie and coffee at the Village Inn. After the show, we were talking, and Nancy wanted to know why Betty and I weren't together anymore. I told her why and then explained my opinion. I didn't expect her answer. What did you expect, Jack? She's young and not ready to live like a nun. She'll want to go out and have fun, and for girls our age, that fun will naturally include guys. Answer me this question, Nancy, what did you do last night? I had fun, yes, but with whom? You know who, Jack. You studied with all of us. So, you went out with Carol, Bev, and Liz to have fun. Do you do this often? Once a week, usually on weekends. I thought they had a great time. They were on the dance floor most of the evening. And so, you were able to have a fun evening without being on a date with guys. Are you telling me that Betty couldn't have done the same during the time we would have spent apart? Remember, even if I stayed here, we would still have spent most of the next 4 years apart because of her schooling 900 miles away. I'm not stupid, Nancy. I know she'll want to date and go out and have fun, but you can do that without getting into a serious relationship. She said she wouldn't wait for me, but she expected me to wait for her while she was studying for 4 years. I would only see her on rare weekends, holidays, and maybe part of her summer vacation. Is this different from waiting for me to come home on vacation or for a 3 or 4 day pass? In the end, she said she wouldn't wait for me, and she didn't. I haven't been away for 3 months, and I come to the VFW and find her with her head on Taylor's shoulder. So don't tell me I was wrong to break up with her. Her relationship. I think I can understand both sides, but be honest with me, Jack. I know you and Betty had a night, and once people our age get a taste of intimate, we want more and more. Do you really think that Betty could live without this for 4 years? Could you? Other people did it. My grandmother did it while my grandfather was at the front in World War II. My mother did it while my father was in Vietnam. The point is, she wouldn't have to go for years without intim. She would have to go without it only when we were apart. Beating a dead horse, if I stayed home, I would have to go without intim while she was at school. It would be unpleasant, but I could handle it. If she really wanted to be mine, she could do it while she was in school. Anyway, for me, this is a dead topic. She made her choice, and I moved on with my life. I can't say I'm upset about it because it gives me a chance. I guess the next question is, do I have a chance? You have a chance, but you need to know what you're getting into. I'll be here for 4 more days, and then I have to report to Fort Lee. I'll be there for 10 weeks before I can go home, and even then, I don't know for how long. It could be another delay on the route to my next duty station, or it could be a vacation of 5 or 10 days. I don't know now whether you can handle a long-distance relationship for the 3 years of my contract. Betty can, because she claimed that she loved me and even talked about marriage before my call. You and I don't have such a deep connection yet. Maybe not, but we have 4 days to try to build it. When I brought her home, she came close to me and kissed me. Before I walked her to the door, we made a date for the next evening. On Monday morning, I woke up late. It was 7:30, which may not seem late to some, but it was late to me. As for the last 3 months, every day had started at 4 in the morning when the barracks lights came on and the sergeant yelled, "Drop your toys and grab your socks." I had breakfast with Mom and Dad, and after Dad left for work, Mom told me that Betty had called. I shrugged and said nothing. You need to talk to her, Jack. Why? She was pretty clear in what she said before I left. Maybe she realized she made a mistake. Maybe when you left, she realized what she had lost. It won't hurt you if you talk to her, Jack. Okay, Mom, I'll call her. She got up, came over, and brought me the phone. I looked at her, and she said, "Do it now before you change your mind." No thanks. I have a date this afternoon, and I want to be in a good mood. I feel like talking to Betty might not keep me in a good mood. I'll call her tomorrow. I had a great time with Nancy. When she asked if I would see her the next day, I said I probably wouldn't and explained why. I expect to be in a depressed mood, and I don't want to force it on you. Nonsense. It will be my job to cheer you up. If she didn't care, I didn't see why I should. So we set up a date for the next day. I woke up at 5, got dressed, and went for a run. I ran 5 miles before I got home, showered, and went downstairs to make myself breakfast. Mom was in the kitchen and told me she had saved breakfast for me, so I sat down and ate it. Mom kept looking at me, then at the phone, and then back at me. I took the hint and told her that I intended to talk to Betty. I finished breakfast, picked up the phone, and called Betty at home. Her father answered the phone, and when I asked for Betty, he asked who was calling. I told him, "Why don't you leave her alone? Haven't you heard her enough?" I lost my composure. To hell with you, old man. I didn't do anything to her except ask her to understand my situation, and she said she didn't care. She asked me to call her, and I did. If you don't want her to talk to me, just hang up and explain it to her yourself. Now, will you bring her or not? I heard him shout, "Betty, get on the phone." A few seconds later, I heard, "Hello. You wanted me to call. So what do you want?" "We should meet and talk." "Jack, why? You've clearly moved on. So what's there to talk about?" "We need to talk about ourselves. There's no us, Betty. You ended us when you straight up said you wouldn't wait for me. You put an end to that when I saw you with Taylor last night. There's nothing between me and Taylor, Jack. It was just a date. That's what he tells everyone. He says intimate with you is wonderful. It was an outright lie, of course. But Taylor was an... I didn't love him. If I could poison his relationship with Betty, I would do it without hesitation. Is he lying? Did he even get a kiss? So you say. Just another case of he said, she said, I guess. Please, Jack, we need to talk. Are you sure Daddy will let you? I don't care about him. Okay, when and where? As soon as possible, and wherever you say. I looked at my watch and said, Village in half an hour. I will be there. I arrived at the Village Inn first and took a booth in the back. I saw Betty come in, look around, see me, and come toward me. She started to sit next to me, but I stopped her and pointed to the other side of the table. She frowned but sat down on the other side. You asked for this meeting, so speak up. Say what's on your mind and let's get this over with. Could you be a little gentler? Why should I? The woman who claimed to love me and was already planning our wedding directly says she won't wait for me. I accepted it as it was and moved on. Okay, I screwed up. But you could have taken the time to gradually lead me to this idea instead of just throwing it at me. I was angry, and that's why I snapped. I'm sorry. After you got up and left, I realized what I did. It took me a while to work up the courage to talk to you, but by that time, you had already left. I begged your mother to ask you to call me. I didn't see the point. You were pretty clear when you said what you said, so I took it as it was. I don't want us to end, Jack. I really don't. Maybe so, but things have changed. I realized that I was completely unrealistic in expecting you to wait until we could get back together. As I see it, there's no way you would spend 4 years and not make any new friends. You're too good not to attract attention. There's no way you wouldn't go on dates, and the way you had a night with me tells me you can't go without it for 4 years. I can do it, Jack. No, you can't, Betty. The way you felt comfortable with your head on Taylor's shoulder tells me that he didn't even get a goodbye kiss. Jack, it was just a date to get out of the house. That's what you're saying now, but given what I saw, I have no doubt that if I hadn't shown up, the night would have ended with you in bed with him. She started to protest, but I interrupted her, and I have to be honest here, I'm pretty sure I can't go my entire tour of duty without having an intimate. It would be great if it were with you, but the chances are that my holidays will not coincide with yours. They're short, so given all the circumstances, it's probably better that we broke up. You can't be serious, Jack. Okay, maybe there will be some difficulties, but we never planned to get married until I graduated from college. I'll wait for you, Jack. The problem, Betty, is that I don't believe you can do it. You've taken to him like a duck to water. There's no way you can convince me that you won't have a night on one of those dates, which could lead to an emotional attachment that could lead to anything. I don't want to sit around in a year or two reading a Dear John letter. It's better to just leave it for now. No, Jack, I won't give up on this. I accept that I may not be able to go without him while you're gone, but I can wait for you. I won't get emotionally involved with anyone else, and if you can say the same, there's no reason why we can't look at the next 3 years as a physical separation rather than an emotional one. When you return home at the end of your service, we can be together again. I won't ask you about what you did while you were away, and I won't tell you about what I did. We'll start from scratch. Can you agree with that? I could, but I still don't believe it. Still, what do I have to lose? It will either happen or it won't. I told Betty I could agree with that, and she smiled and said, okay, let's get out of here and find a motel where we can catch up on the last 3 months. She got really angry when I told her I couldn't. I have a date with Nancy tonight, and I can't cancel at the last minute. Why not? Because I have to tell her that you and I are kind of back together. Why? What does this concern her? I told her what happened with Nancy, I said. Betty angrily responded, I'll deal with this. No, you can't. I'm the one who told her that you and I broke up, and everything went from there. I'll see her tonight and let her know that the situation has changed. I'll call you in the morning, and we'll see what we can do in the last 2 days of my stay here. She didn't want to accept it, but in the end, she realized that I wouldn't change my mind and had to accept it. My date with Nancy didn't go at all as I expected. It was supposed to just be dinner and a movie, but we never got to the movie. We arrived at Try Cozy, sat down, and ordered. While we were waiting for food, I told Nancy about meeting Betty. She listened and then asked, do you think she can do it? Honestly, no. I don't think she can, but I have nothing to lose by giving her a chance. I can do it easily because I won't have time to get emotionally attached to anyone else in 3 days of vacation or on rare weekends outside the base. It is impossible to build a serious relationship. I will not have the same opportunities as her. After all, you were the first to tell me that she is young and will not want to live like a nun. Then our dishes arrived, and we ate in silence. Nancy refused dessert, and as we walked out to the car, she said, I don't want to go to the movies. Just take me home. The drive home was quiet, and I mentally kicked myself for not waiting until the end of the date to tell Nancy about meeting Betty. When I got her home, I walked her to the door and wasn't surprised that she didn't try to kiss me on the cheek. The surprise was when she asked me to come in. I followed her into the house, assuming she wanted to talk, but I was wrong. She told me to sit on the couch while she went to get a beer. I wondered how her parents would react when they found out she was taking their beer, but that thought quickly faded when she returned to the living room. She held a bottle of beer in each hand but was only wearing an apron. She smiled when she saw the expression on my face. Don't worry, Jack. My parents are in Las Vegas for a week. It's just you and me, and I'm going to give you a good reason to think about me while you're gone and a good reason to come back to me. She handed me a beer and said, Here, drink this while I get to work. I woke up the next morning to the smell of coffee. I got up, put on my clothes, and went to the kitchen. Nancy was there, and she was wearing only an apron. Good morning, sunshine, she said as I walked into the kitchen. I was just about to wake you up. It's a shame you were already awake because I think you'd really like it the way I did it. I can go back and pretend to be asleep. Maybe later. You're already up, and the coffee is hot. The mugs are in the cupboard to your left, the cream and sugar are on the table. I took a mug, poured some coffee, and sat down at the table. I didn't know what to say, and the silence was a little awkward. While I didn't know what to say, Nancy knew. I know last night was a bit of a surprise, but it was something I had planned to do after a few dates and before you left. After talking to you at the restaurant, I realized there wouldn't be any more dates, so I sped up the program. I wanted to make sure you knew you had options if it didn't work out with Betty. I know you don't think she can wait for you, but like you said, you're willing to give her a chance. I'm not going to lie to you, I like Intim too much to go 3 years without it, and I know you can't go 3 years without it either. But I know myself well. I know that no matter who I'm with, I'll spend the night. I won't get into a serious relationship until I graduate from college and start working. That's 3.5 years, and you'll be back home in 3. That'll give us plenty of time to build something. Having said that, I want one more time before I let you go to BTY for the rest of your stay here. I smiled and said, lead me. I called and made an appointment for the evening. My plan was to have dinner and a movie, like last time. This plan failed as soon as Betty got into the car. She didn't ask what I was planning, she just looked at me and said, motel now. I'm not going to waste another minute of the time I have left before you leave. It was frustrating to pay full price for a room we only used for 5 hours, but I ended up getting more than my money's worth. When I dropped Betty off at her house, we had a tearful goodbye and promised to write to each other regularly. I spent a good night with my parents and called Nancy around 8 o'clock in the evening. I told her I would like to keep in touch, and she said she hoped so and gave me her address. Why would I do this? Because I'm not stupid. I know the chances of Betty waiting for me are slim. As Nancy said and then did, she wanted to give me a good reason to think about her while I was gone and a good reason to come back to her. Do not misunderstand me, Betty was my choice, but as a backup, Nancy was definitely an option. The next 3 years confirmed that most of my assumptions were correct. The Army really made sure that my free time did not coincide with the times when Betty would be home from college. Although I had 30 days of vacation a year, I could not take it at my discretion. I could only take it when it was convenient for the Army. For example, I applied for leave after completing my course at Fort Lee, and it probably went straight into the trash can next to the first sergeant's desk. When I graduated from Fort Lee, I was sent to Germany with no chance of returning home. I finished the course on Friday, took the train to New York on Saturday, and flew to Germany on Sunday. After completing my tour of duty in Germany, I was transferred to Korea and was able to take leave coupled with a 14-day en route delay before being sent to Fort Lewis in Washington for deployment to Korea. Betty and Nancy continued to write me letters. Betty's letters were full of school events, her classes, dorm roommates, and other such things, along with the usual I love you, I miss you, and I wish you were here. Nancy's letters contained something similar but also talked about some of our classmates and what happened to them. She also shared details about her dates with me. I learned about all the losers and rare nice guys she wanted to see again, and all the reasons she ended up leaving them. What happened next was my own fault because I didn't write to them and tell them I was coming home. I returned home on Monday, a week after summer vacation ended, and Betty had already left to go back to college. I spent 2 days catching up with Mom and Dad, then called Nancy, who was attending a local community college. Although she was glad to hear from me, she said that she would not be able to see me for a while. I'm dating a guy, and although it's not serious, I can't just leave him. I promised to go to a concert with him this weekend, and he already bought tickets. Call me in a week, okay? Of course I'll call. Have a good time at the concert. After I hung up, I thought how stupid it was to come home and waste my time here, 15 days of vacation and 14 days of delay, a total of 29 days, and not much to do. Then a crazy thought came to me. I had 27 days left, and there was no reason why I couldn't spend some of that time going to Betty's. It was 900 miles, but so what? At 70 miles per hour on the highway, and even with a couple of rest stops, I could be there in 14 to 15 hours. I told my mom and dad what I was going to do, and they just said, drive carefully. 16 hours later, I turned onto the street where Betty's dorm was located. I knew where to go because 2 years ago I had helped Bob Fletcher move his sister to college, and Betty lived in the same dorm. It was a little after 4 o'clock, and I was hoping that Betty's classes had ended for the day and that I would catch her at the dorm. I spent the last 3 hours of the drive kicking myself for not calling Betty to tell her I was coming, but I wanted to surprise her. I parked and walked into the dorm, asking for Betty. "You just missed her. She, Gwen, and Judy just left. I think they went to Carlos' Pizzeria." I found the address and went there. When I walked in, I saw Betty sitting at a table with 2 other girls and 3 guys. Her back was to me, but I knew it was Betty because she was the only redhead in the place. As I approached the table, the guy sitting next to Betty put his arm around her, and she leaned into him. They kissed, and everyone at the table started whistling and shouting things like, "Get a room," and "Hey, you too, go to a motel." Betty said, "As soon as we finish eating, right, love?" "Yeah, you're right," the guy said, and kissed her again. I felt like I was hit hard in the stomach, and I even staggered, grabbing a chair for support. One of the girls sitting across from Betty saw this and asked, "Is everything okay, mister?" This caused the 3 people sitting with their backs to me to turn and see what the girl was looking at. I saw Betty's face turn pale, and she said, "Oh damn." By that time, I had already come to my senses and turned towards the exit. I was getting into the car when Betty ran out into the street. She looked around, saw me, and screamed, "Wait, Jack, wait." But I started the car and drove away, leaving Betty standing there, calling me back. 100 miles later, I asked myself why I hadn't talked to her, but by then it was too late. I was very upset. I stopped on the side of the road and cried. I don't think I've shed a tear since I was 6 years old, and my dad scolded me for painting our dog red. But that night, I cried a bucket of tears on the side of the road. Finally, I pulled myself together and drove home. I drove another 100 miles before I was too tired to continue. I stopped at a rest stop, got comfortable, and fell asleep. I woke up about 4 hours later, warmed up, relieved myself, and hit the road again. Exactly 40 hours after leaving, I parked in the driveway of the house. There was no one at home, so I went up to my room, undressed, took a shower, and went to bed. I woke up at 9 o'clock, went to the kitchen, made myself a cup of tea, and then went into the living room, where I found my mother sitting on the sofa reading a book. She looked up when I entered and said, "I didn't expect to see you so quickly. It just didn't work out." She raised her eyebrows but didn't say anything more. A minute later, she said, "Betty called about 6 times, and someone named Nancy called and asked me to tell you to call her as soon as you get here. Nancy Newbert, you should remember her. We went to school together, and she was at some of my birthday parties. Blonde with braces, it's her, but the braces were removed a long time ago." I looked at the clock and thought Nancy was still awake, so I went to the kitchen, took the phone, and called her. "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon. I should have called ahead instead of trying to pull off a surprise. That doesn't sound good. This is wrong. The reason I called is because Mike had someone die and he flew to Denver. He gave me tickets to the concert. Do you want to go?" "Certainly. How about right now? Are you busy?" "No, I'm not doing anything. Do you want to do something? And don't you dare ask me what I mean. I can be with you in 20 minutes. I'll be ready." As I was leaving, Mom asked me what she should tell Betty if she called again. "Tell her to enjoy her college and I'll call her when I'm free," I said, and then I left before she could respond. Nancy was waiting for me to get to her house and was out of the house and in her car before I could even pull out of the driveway. She opened the door, walked up to me, and said, "Starlight is the closest. Go on the way." She asked me about the trip, and I told her what happened. She said, "I don't like being like this, I told you so. But you're a little unrealistic expecting her not to play around. That's not the point. I've already come to terms with this. I knew she couldn't do without it, but getting hit in the face like that was brutal. In a way, I'm glad. This means I can take advantage of the situation." "And take advantage of the situation you did," she said. When I woke up in the morning, Nancy was hugging me. We showered and went to the village Inn for breakfast. After we ordered, I asked, "When I take you home, do I have to worry about your dad and his shotgun?" "Dad left town on business, but even if you were here, He understands that I'm already a big girl. But you need to take me home. I have an activity at 10 o'clock that I can't afford to be late for, and I need to change my clothes and grab my book bag. When I dropped her off at the house, she said, I'll be home around 4 o'clock. This was said in such a tone and in such a way that I understood it was an invitation. So I said, I can be here at 5 o'clock. She smiled and said, see you, then got out of the car. Not a good idea, Mom, I thought. She really wouldn't want to hear what I have to say right now. If we ever talk, it will be in the future after I've had time to get over some things. Mom didn't bother asking what I wanted for dinner. Instead, she asked, what do you want for dinner? I have a date with Nancy, I said. She winced but then threw all her thoughts aside and said, try not to make any other plans for Sunday. I invited my family over for dinner so they could all see you. I'll be here, but keep in mind that I might bring a girl. She frowned but didn't say anything. My date with Nancy was not a date in the traditional sense of the word. We didn't do what most people do on a date. We didn't have dinner, watch a show, or go dancing. After a few hours, we went to have something to eat. I told her about the family dinner on Sunday and asked if she wanted to go on a date with me. I was surprised when she said, no, it's too early for me to start meeting your family. We need to move a little further in our relationship before I'm ready for that. This raises a question. How are we going to develop a relationship if all we do is find a motel and stay in it? I'm not going to waste time building a relationship with you until you leave the military. A lot can happen in 3 years. Like I told you before, I know myself, and I won't get into a serious relationship until I graduate from college and get a job. By then, you'll be home. What I'm doing now gives you reason to think that when you come home, we can stay together forever. I want you to think about me while you're here. Another reason is that I'm not sure how much time you can spend building a relationship with me on this trip. I have no doubt that Betty has no intention of trying to make things right with you. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if Betty isn't home yet, trying to contact you, or is on her way. I'm not stupid, Jack. I know I have a hard fight ahead to win you over. It's too big a story for me not to believe that you both have a good chance of getting back together. Admit it, love, you have already agreed that she will play around while she is at school. True, but the other thing I've pretty much accepted is that she'll find someone she likes better there and I'll end up being replaced. Enough about Betty. What about the concert? Where is it and how long do we need to get there? What time do I need to pick you up? At the fairgrounds. The concert starts at 7 o'clock. If you pick me up at 6 o'clock, we can probably get there early enough to get good seats. But it won't be until tomorrow evening. What are we going to do for the rest of today? We have a motel room until checkout time tomorrow. We can stop at the store, grab a deck of cards, go back to our room, and play gin rummy. I agree with the gaming part, but it won't be cards, Nancy said. She had things to do with her parents in the morning, so I was home by 8 o'clock. We kissed, and I told her I'd see her at 6 o'clock, then headed home. Nancy was right when she said Betty was either home or on her way. When I walked into the house, I found Betty sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee with my mom. There you are, said Mom. We were wondering if we'd see you this morning. She looked at her watch and then said, I have to go or I'll be late for my hair appointment, and she got up and left me with Betty. Betty started to get up, and I thought she was probably going to come up to me for a hug and a kiss. I said, just stay here, Betty. I'll get you a cup of coffee and then join you at the table. I took the cup my mother always kept in the pan until noon, then sat down at the table and asked, what brings you here at this hour, Betty? We need to talk, Jack. Since you won't answer my calls, I had to come here. I don't understand, Betty. What do we need to talk about? About what you saw when you came to school. You don't need to talk about it, Betty. I had already come to terms with the fact that you had no intention of becoming a nun while you were there. In fact, if you remember, we've already discussed this issue. Then why did you react like that? Why didn't you stay and talk to me? Why did you leave and make me call you? Because it confirmed my fears, and I just couldn't handle it. Were your fears confirmed? It all started when you said you wouldn't wait for me and that I shouldn't expect you to be there when I returned. Back then, I knew deep down that you would meet someone at school and I would lose you to him. We talked, and I agreed with you on how to approach the years I would be gone. I accepted the fact that you would have an intimate relationship, and I could live with that. But the problem is that deep down, I always knew you would have an emotional relationship, and it would all be over for us. Once I saw what was happening at the pizzeria, I knew we didn't need to stay here and keep talking about it. Damn it, Jack. Of course, we needed to talk about this. I'm not emotionally connected to anyone. Tyler is just a guy I see from time to time. It's my turn to talk nonsense. You had only been back at school for less than a week, and the others at this table were treating the two of you like an established couple. This doesn't happen in less than a week. I saw you kissing, and I heard the tone of your voice when you called him lover and when you said that you were going to take him to a room or motel when you finished eating. I also saw that second kiss. There's no doubt about it. In my opinion, it's not possible for this to happen in less than a week or with a guy you only dated occasionally. No way, Betty. You were in an established relationship, and we both know it. Okay, Jack, I admit it. Tyler and I have a relationship, but it's not emotional, at least not in a romantic or familial sense. Tyler and I are in the same boat. He has a girlfriend at home, but he's just like me. He needs a nightlife. When we graduate, he'll go home to Maggie and I'll go home to you. I wanted to believe her, I really did, but I couldn't. Was she going to spend 2 more years with this guy Tyler and not be emotionally involved? I didn't think so. But given the circumstances, I could afford to wait and see how things were when I got home. What now? What do you mean by now? How long will you be home, and what are you going to do? 25 days left. I have enough money, and I thought I could get a motel room and spend a week with you when you weren't studying, but that didn't work out. It still can. I don't know if it will work now. Why not? Because of you and that Tyler guy. He doesn't matter to me. And you? What will all your friends think? They will understand or not. It doesn't matter to me. Okay, honey, I'll do it, but not for a couple of days. I promised to do something for Mom and Dad since my trip to see you didn't go well. It was an outright lie. I had nothing in common with Mom and Dad, but I had to deal with Nancy without burning any bridges. I had a big problem. I had already promised to go to the concert with Nancy. However, when it came to choosing, Betty was always preferred over Nancy. My new problem was how I could gracefully leave the date and still maintain some kind of relationship with Nancy. All sorts of ideas were swirling around in my head when suddenly I got lucky. Betty misread my expression and said, "You don't have to call the motel and get us a room." I wasn't sure how meeting you would end up, so when Dad found out I was coming home this weekend, he assigned me to attend one of his business social events, and I told him I would go. This got me off the topic of Nancy, but it did raise a question. Why does your father think he can force you to do things like this? Because he always did, and I never said no. But why? Because usually, there's a dance group, and a lot of men don't bring their wives. They need a dance partner. Another reason I don't say no is because I'll be working for Dad when I graduate, and it helps me get to know some of the people I'll be working with. There are probably a lot of lonely guys there, too. They usually are. The thought that popped into my head wasn't good. I saw her father's hand in this, but wisely, at least I thought it was wise, I decided not to say a word. Then Betty smiled and said, "If you could pick me up at 8 in the morning, we could probably spend some time at the motel." Like I'd say no, I replied. We moved into the living room and sat on the couch for a while until she had to leave. Before she left, I told her about the family dinner the next day and asked if she wanted to be my date. "I'll do it, but I probably won't be too happy about it." "Why not?" "I thought you liked my family." "Yes, but it will reduce the time we have at the motel. I'll try to make it worth your while until I get to college and get a room. We can get back to it after dinner and social hour." Great. On the way to the fair, I told Nancy about Betty's return home and that I was going to spend a week with her. "These are numbers," Nancy said. "What numbers?" "Just when I thought I would leave everyone to be at your disposal until your leave was up, everything changed. It depends on you and what you are willing to agree to." "What does that mean?" "It means you have to decide what you are willing to do. You said to yourself that you have a hard fight ahead of you. I'm not going to try to put an end to your attempts, but you have to decide whether I'm worth what you want. How much time I give to Betty or not. I have no doubt that Betty won't go back to school and keep Tyler on the line until I leave, and then they can go back to their friends with a profitable relationship. I know she's going to sleep with someone else, so I don't see any reason why I can't either. You can spend as much time with me as you want when Betty is not around, but only you can decide whether you are willing to agree to that. Full honesty, Nancy, Betty will always be my first choice. Only she can end us if she decides she wants someone else. There's nothing I can do about it, and we're done. And you're not the only one. Besides what might happen at school, there's also the fact that her father can't stand me. When I first met him, he told me straight up that I wasn't good enough for his little girl and he would do everything in his power to stop me from becoming part of the family. Betty despises this and thinks she can persuade him to see things her way. He will use his money and influence to keep me away from his family. I already know she will go to work for him when she graduates, and I'm sure he will push her toward promising single men in his companies and do everything he can to introduce her to the sons of his rich friends. It's not at all certain that Betty and I will stay together. No girl wants to know she's the first or second choice. But I'll stick it out because you're head and shoulders above the rest of the guys I've dated. I will do everything I can just to help you remember me. Then I'm all yours when I return from my week with Betty. I'll take what I can get, Jack, and I don't mind telling you that I'll hope like hell that what you fear might happen to Betty actually happens. I decided it was better not to say anything about this. I picked up Nancy and we got to the fair early enough to get good seats, and we enjoyed the concert. We had a make-out session when I took her home, and she was upset that I didn't take her to the motel. I told her I couldn't but didn't say why. I think she probably figured it out on her own. I told her I would call on Monday and drove home. I set the alarm for 8 and called Betty when I got up. Luckily, she answered the phone and not her father. I told her I'd pick her up at 9 o'clock. She waited on the porch, and by 9:20 we were in room 204 at the Starlight Motel. We made love a couple of times, and at noon we cleaned up and went to my parents' house for a party. We spent the next 7 hours socializing with family and friends my parents had invited. By 7:30, we were back in room 204, repeating what had happened that morning. Betty didn't have to go back to school until Tuesday, so we could sleep in a little more in the morning. I took her home, kissed her, and told her I would see her in 2 days. Okay, I know I was a jerk. I didn't need 2 days to go to Betty. I could go right away. My meaning was that I spent those 2 days with Nancy. I took advantage of her feelings for me. In my defense, all I can say is that I really didn't expect Betty to be waiting for me when I came back for good, and I needed a backup. Nancy wanted to be that backup, so I needed to encourage that desire in her, and the best way to do that was to do some of the things she wanted. What she seemed to want was more time. At Starlight, it was inevitable that in the 9 days I spent with Betty, I would meet the people she mostly socialized with, and it was an interesting experience. I was mostly perceived as bad weather, warm and sunny, then it rains for a couple of days, but you know it will soon pass and the sun will shine again. I had never met Tyler, but I saw him twice when Betty took me to a party and once when we went to a pizza place. The looks he gave Betty didn't strike me as those of a guy who was just a friend with benefits. Speaking of looks, some of the ones Betty gave him seemed to say, "Be patient, it'll all be over soon." Otherwise, the visit was good. I did spend a lot of time with Betty. She seemed determined to give me enough love to last until our next meeting. The farewell was tearful, at least from Betty's side, not so much for me, because, as I've mentioned a dozen times, I've already come to terms with the fact that Betty won't be waiting for me when I come back for good. Also, because she will undoubtedly be sleeping with Tyler before I get halfway home, I spent the next 6 days with Nancy and then cut my visit home short, heading to Seattle where I spent the remaining days of my vacation sightseeing in the Northwest. I was in for a surprise when I arrived at Fort Lewis. They told me I was out of shape. I thought, what the hell are you talking about? Because I was wearing a clean and pressed Class A uniform and my boots were polished to a shine. The sergeant saw my expression and laughed. "Relax, soldier, I'm just making fun of you." The order for promotion to corporal arrived before your arrival. These private stripes need to be removed and replaced. I spent 11 days at Fort Lewis and then was sent to Korea. I spent the next 12 months there and was able to spend 10 days in Japan and 6 days in Taiwan on vacation. I had the opportunity to try out Asian girls and became convinced that the rumors were not true. Asian girls do not have side eyes. Perhaps I should have mentioned this earlier, but while I was in Germany, I was able to spend short holidays and weekends in Spain, France, and England, and I was also able to try out girls there. I was able to see for myself a universal truth: there are no bad girls. I was in my last month of service in Korea when I got what I had always known was coming, a letter from Betty. She had met her soulmate and was regretting having to tell me that blah blah blah. I expected it, but it still hurt like hell. 3 days later, I received a letter from Nancy with a newspaper clipping. It was the announcement of Betty's engagement to Bernard Alistair Crumpton. I recognized the name. He was the son of one of Betty's father's rich friends. He was about the same age as me, but I never met him because his parents sent him to a private school in the East. Nancy's letter said that she knew how much I must be hurting, but from her point of view, it was good news. I wouldn't have the ghost of Betty hanging over my shoulder when I got back. I completed my tour of duty in Korea and was assigned to Fort Bliss to complete the final 13 months of my contract. I decided not to take the vacation because I learned that I would be paid for any unused vacation days when I was discharged, and I honestly didn't feel like I had anything important worth going home for. That doesn't mean Nancy didn't matter, but in my mind, she was always the backup option if Betty wasn't waiting for me. That doesn't mean I didn't have feelings for Nancy, but they weren't as strong as the ones I had for Betty. Only God knew if these feelings could develop into ones that would lead to marriage, but the pain of losing Betty was too fresh for me to get over soon. Life took an interesting turn. 6 months into my service at Fort Bliss, I became good friends with Ron, the sergeant first class one worked with. He was a military man by profession and married, and he and his wife, Gail, lived in official housing. I was invited to their house several times for dinner and weekend barbecues. Gail was a pleasant woman with a cheerful personality and a pleasure to talk to. One day, it was a Tuesday, and this is a day I will never forget. Ron came up to me and said that he was being sent on a business trip to Okinawa for 2 months. He added, "I need a big favor, Jack." "If I can, I'll help," I replied. "Gail is a very cute woman, Jack, and there's no way she can go without intim while I'm gone. The service I need you to provide is to satisfy her intimate needs while I am away. Gail likes you and agrees with me that you're the right person for this." I was stunned. A man was asking me to sleep with his wife. I just stood there and looked at him as he continued, "Gail doesn't like to go out and look for random connections because God knows who she might run into, some kind of psycho, serial killer, a guy with 7 different diseases. Our answer is to find the right person to meet her needs from the comfort of our home. How about it, Jack? Will you help us?" I was stunned but not stupid. Go off base, go to bars, and spend money to find someone to sleep with, or stay on base, save money, and still get your needs met? Of course, I agreed. I asked him how it would work, and he told me he was leaving on Thursday and that I was invited to dinner on Friday. Just follow Gail. I was more nervous than ever when I rang the doorbell at Ron's apartment on Friday. A smiling Gail opened the door and invited me in. I handed her the flowers and bottle of wine I had bought, and she thanked me for them. Then she led me into the kitchen, where she told me to open and pour the wine while she put the flowers in a vase. She sat down, took a sip of wine, and laughed. You should see the expression on your face. You look like a deer staring into the headlights of an oncoming car. It's not worth it, honey. Just imagine that you met me at a bar and I brought you home. This is what you would do on a Friday or Saturday, right? We had dinner, and then over a glass of wine, she asked me to tell her about myself. I shared the whole story that led me to enlist in the army and what happened afterward. When I finished talking about the Dear Jack letter, she said, "That must have been a blow to you. Fortunately, Miss Gail knows how to treat such blows. This morning at breakfast, I put you in your place. Don't get the wrong idea, honey. We will only be lovers, and there will be no emotional attachment between us. I really like you, or you wouldn't be here, but Ron is my man and always will be. Our lifestyle is far from ordinary, but it works for us. We both know that neither of us can live without night. For us, intim is the same physical need as air, food, and water. We meet all our needs when we are together, but when he is not here, I know that he also meets his needs just like I do. So, are we okay? I'm here, aren't I? I said. Good guy. See you tonight. Dinner at 6 o'clock. Over the next 2 months, Gail and I dated. We saw each other 2 or 3 times a week, and there was no holding hands, hugging, or kissing. We immediately went to the bedroom and had a night. The schedule was set up so that I worked every other weekend, and Gail had a car, so we would sometimes go out for dinner and dancing when I could get the weekend off. I would crash at her place 1 or 2 nights a week. No one cared where I was when I wasn't on duty, and no one said anything unless I was spending the night in the barracks. All that mattered to everyone was that I was at work when I was supposed to be. I think it helped that Ron was on good terms with all the senior sergeants, and they probably knew what was going on. I later learned that some of them had the same arrangements with their wives. 2 months and a week after our last time together, Gail said that this would be our last time. Ron would be back next week, and I needed to be strong enough to give him a warm welcome. She gave me a warm send-off. I admit that although there was supposed to be no emotional attachment between us, I did become attached to Gail. If she had been free, I would have pursued her. The hardest thing to deal with was when Ron returned to duty. It turned out that I didn't need to worry. The old network of sergeants Ron belonged to transferred me to another position so that we would not overlap at work. It became apparent that Ron knew from past instances that the work relationship could be awkward and took steps to ease the situation. It was also clear from the way I was treated by the senior sergeants under whom I worked that I had earned points for how I handled the situation and for never saying a word to anyone about my relationship with Gail. In the last month of my contract, 2 things happened, both on the same day. First, I received a letter from Nancy. She met a guy, and sparks flew between them, and she felt I should know she wouldn't be available when I returned. I wasn't as depressed as I was when I lost Betty because my feelings for Nancy weren't as strong as they were for Betty, but it was still unpleasant. The second event happened just before I finished my shift. I was called into the office and told that I had a call. Senior Sergeant Holmes handed me the phone. Hello? Hello, my love. Did you miss me? It was Gail. Of course, I missed you. Ron was just sent to Fort Lee for a 3-week training course. I'm making meatloaf, baked potatoes, and glazed carrots for dinner. Any interest? I just smiled and asked, at what time? If I'm right, you've just gotten off duty, and it won't take you more than 10 minutes to get here. I'm dirty and sweaty. I need to go to the barracks, take a shower, and change clothes. A stupid boy. You can take a shower here. As for dirty clothes, if all goes well, you won't wear them at all during the weekend. Ron told me he checked, and it's your weekend. Do you think you can handle being without anything with me for 2 days? I'll be there in 10 minutes. I handed the phone back to Sergeant Holmes, and he gave me a knowing smile and wished me a nice weekend. The 4 weeks before my discharge were a repeat of our first time. That first night, I told her I would be retiring in 4 weeks, and she said it would be just in time. I'll leave, and she'll have a week to prepare for Ron's warm welcome. On our last date before I left, I did something I hadn't done throughout our entire time together. I hugged her and, despite her attempts to avoid it, kissed her. I then walked away, told her I would never forget her and the time we spent together, and left. 2 days later, I was on a Southwest Airlines flight home. The Army did for me what the recruiter promised. It gave me a profession and an education. The correspondence course helped me earn an associate's degree in business management from the Armed Forces Military Institute, and the Army education program would help me if I decided to pursue a full bachelor's degree. As for the profession, I was prepared for several roles. My main MOS specialty was supply specialist. I learned how to build boxes and containers, properly pack items for shipping, load and unload trucks, trailers, rail cars, and containers using forklifts, pallets, and forklifts with drum grips. I learned to drive trucks ranging from small to 2.5 tons and semi-trailers. I learned how to warehouse and store things, as well as send and receive cargo. But the most important thing was that I mastered the Army computer system related to the supply department. I learned all its features, advantages, and disadvantages, and felt that with some work, I could adapt the program for civilian applications. In the end, it turned out to be an unrealistic dream because by the time I left, someone else had already done it. Still, mastering the system benefited me. When I returned home, my father asked what I planned to do: get a job, find a place to live, take college classes to get my bachelor's degree, and then try to find a girl to build a life with, and roughly in that order. It might take a day or two, or maybe even 3 or 4. Things at the plant weren't going well when you left, but now business is going great. Based on what you've told me about your time in the military, I think you'd be a great fit in our shipping and receiving department. Do you want me to talk to them? Won't this be awkward for you? Not at all. You will not be under my supervision. You'll be in a completely different department. If you think it will help, let's try it. As for housing, there's nothing wrong with staying here until you get back on your feet. My father arranged an interview for me. I passed it and got the job. It took a week to get comfortable, and then it was as if I had never left the army. I was doing the same job I'd been doing for most of the last 3 years. After being home for a couple of weeks, I went out to a dance at the VFW on Saturday night and met some old friends who were already there. When I walked in, they saw me and waved for me to join them. They pushed 3 tables together, and I noticed something as I sat down. Liz wore a wedding ring, as did Bev, Ashley, Mary Waters, John Miller, Mike Orson, George Hammer, and Tom Bradshaw. The group quickly told me the news. Bev and Mike were husband and wife, as were John and Mary, and Liz was married to Tom. George was married to Barbara Peterson, who joined the group after finishing her shift at the hospital. Carol Finley and Denise Baggett weren't wearing rings and didn't appear to have dates, despite having empty seats next to them. There was a lot of talk about where I had been, what I did, and what I saw, but Carol interrupted it when she stood up from her seat, walked over to me, and took my hand. Enough of his chatter. I came here to dance, not to chat. For the next hour, I took turns dancing with Carol, Bev, Bara, and Liz. When the group took a break, we went back to talking about the places I had been when Betty and some guy walked in. I assumed it was Crompton. There was no room at our table, not that I thought Betty would sit here, so they sat in a booth on the other side of the room. Carol noticed me looking at Betty and asked, "Already experienced this?" I don't know if I'll ever be able to completely forget her, but leaving behind, yes, the memories won't fade, at least not soon. Look on the bright side. At least you didn't have time to put a ring on her finger. Yes, you're probably right about that. Are you thinking of trying to separate them? No, this chapter of my life is over. Time to turn the page and move on. You are sure? Certainly. Why do you ask? I want to make sure I'm not wasting my time. If I take a step towards you, will you take a step towards me? Why do you want to do this? We've known each other since elementary school, and in all that time, you've never shown any interest in me. Damn, Carol, I've probably asked you out 2 or 3 dozen times over the years, and you've always turned me down. That was then, and now is now. So, what has changed? I want to know what is so special about you that Betty warned us all to stay away from you while she was at school. I do not believe it. Believe me, she directly said that she would claw out the eyes of anyone who tried to hit on her boyfriend. Her exact words were, "Jack, anyone who tries to hit on my boyfriend." I do not believe it. I dated Nancy, and Betty didn't do anything to her. That's because Nancy told Betty to get lost and die and warned her that her eyes would be in danger if she tried anything. I never knew about this. So, how about it, Jack? Do you want to try it and see what happens? Why not? I thought I had nothing to lose, and now that I was back for good, I needed to start somewhere. The band returned from the break and started playing. I stood up, offered Carol my hand, and she took it. We danced together for the rest of the evening. Every time Carol and I danced past the booth Betty was sitting in, she would turn her head and look at the wall. I have to admit, I took a perverse pleasure in the thought of ruining Betty's evening. Finally, she grabbed her purse and stood up. Crompton tried to hold her back, but she broke free and headed for the door. He got up, followed her, caught up with her at the door, said something to her, and she hit him in the face before leaving. Crompton waited a few seconds and then left, too. I was human enough to hope that I was the cause of it. Carol and I missed the last call, and I walked her to her car. We agreed on a date for Sunday. She kissed me on the cheek, and I drove home. Our date on Sunday consisted of dinner and a movie. We had dinner at Tri-Eye, and it was wonderful. What made it great for me was that Betty and her boyfriend were already there eating when Carol and I arrived. We were seated so that Betty was practically forced to look at us. The chair she was sitting on faced our table, so if she lifted her head from her plate, she was looking straight at us. I sat with my back to her, so I couldn't see her reaction, and Carol didn't mention anything noteworthy. Betty and her boyfriend left before Carol and I had finished, and Carol noticed Crompton giving us a dirty look as they walked out. "He seems angry with you. What's the matter? Did you do something to him?" "I've never met him. I have no idea why he would be angry with me. It probably has something to do with Betty. I don't know. I haven't had any contact with her since I received the letter saying everything was over between us. As long as it's over, I'm fine with it." Carol and I dated for the next month until one night she said, "We need to take it to the next level, Jack. If you don't have money for a motel, I can pay." The truth was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to take it to the next level. Between work and evening classes at college, I didn't have time for a serious relationship, and that was why I hadn't taken a step in that direction with Carol yet. But I wasn't a fool, and I wasn't going to pass up the opportunity to have a night, especially when it was explicitly suggested. This wasn't the first time I had been to room 204 at the Starlight, and this visit was just as enjoyable as the previous one. From that night on, we found a way to be together at least once a week until I saved enough money to rent an apartment. Once that happened, we started spending one night a week together, and then both days on the weekends. It was inevitable that Carol and I would occasionally cross paths with Betty. Although I didn't understand why she looked at us with hatred, I was glad that she was angry about something related to me. Carol and I had been together for 5 months when I realized our relationship was going nowhere. I asked Carol to move in with me, and she refused. "I like you, Jack. I really like you, but there's no spark between us, at least not for me. You're a great friend with benefits, but it wouldn't be fair to you if I moved in with you and then moved out again if a guy came along who gave me that spark." I can't say I was devastated by her statement because I also realized there was no spark between us. Although I asked her to move in with me, I knew I would never ask her to marry me. Our friends with benefits relationship continued for a couple more months, and then she graduated and accepted a job offer in another state. Graduation brought something else. Betty received her diploma and returned home. A month later, she became Mrs. Elizabeth Crompton after a wedding that the Star Tribune called the social event of the season. I wasn't invited. Things were going pretty well at work. Remember when I said I mastered the quartermaster's computer system and was going to adapt the program for civilian use, only for someone to do it first? It turned out that this was the system my company was using. One day, I went into the office to get the documents I needed and found the boss at the computer, cursing. I asked what was wrong, and when he told me, I walked up to him, looked at the screen, picked up the mouse, and showed him what to do. All you need to do is click on the top left corner of the screen, and when the drop-down menu appears, click on Sort and wait for the prompt to execute the command. Do you know this program? This is the civilian version of the program the Army uses, and I worked with it all the time. Why is there nothing in this corner to indicate that something's there? No idea. You'll need to ask the person who developed and wrote the program. From then on, whenever Mel had problems with the program, he always called me. This made me a favorite in the shipping and receiving department, not only because there wasn't a single job in the department that I couldn't handle, but also because I noticed ways things could be done more efficiently and cost-effectively, and I pointed these out to Mel. After being there for just over 3 years, Mel had to retire due to health issues. When asked for a list of potential replacements, he handed in just one name, mine. During those same 3 years, I had also completed a training program and earned a bachelor's degree in business management, so I felt confident in front of senior management, and they gave me Mel's job. Another year passed, and while I was succeeding at work, my personal life wasn't perfect. I was dating enough to feel content, but I never found someone I truly wanted to settle down with or who could put up with my lifestyle. For a while, I ended up in a casual relationship with Abby Devon, reminiscent of what I had with Gail. Abby was married, and her husband was stationed overseas in the military. One night at the VFW, she made a move on me. She told me that Carol had mentioned she should give me a try if she ever got the chance. She was quite direct, saying she needed someone to be close with until her husband returned. I politely told her I couldn't get involved with a married woman, especially one whose husband was serving overseas. She assured me that she had his permission, to which I responded sarcastically, "Sure, I bet." Then, to my surprise, she pulled out an envelope from her purse and handed me a letter. It was, without a doubt, the strangest letter I'd ever read. It said, "To whom it may concern, my wife, Abigail Grace Kazan, is permitted to have personal relations with men of her choosing while I am away." The letter was signed by Gregory William Kazan and notarized. Abby was an attractive woman, and after reading the letter, I hesitated no longer. I went home with her that night, and we spent the evening together. The next morning, I found myself feeling unexpectedly envious of Gregory William Kazan. Abby and I continued our arrangement for about 2 years, off and on, depending on when her husband was away. It would pause when he came home on leave and resume when he left again. Eventually, he was demobilized, and that chapter came to an end. Interestingly enough, I became friends with Greg after he returned for good. One day, while sitting at Bud's bar, a guy I didn't know came up to me and asked if he could buy me a beer. I never turned down a free drink, so I said yes. "You're Jack, right?" he asked. I nodded. "Do we know each other?" "No, we've never met, but we have a lot in common," he replied. "Oh? Like what?" I asked, intrigued. "My wife, Abby. I'm Greg Kazan, and I wanted to thank you for being there for her while I was away." I almost replied with something cheeky but managed to hold my tongue. Greg chuckled and said, "I know this is awkward, but I needed to meet you. I love Abby, and it would destroy me to lose her. It could have happened if she'd met the wrong guy while I was gone." I asked him why he was so sure she would meet someone, and he explained that Abby had been upfront with him. She had told him she wasn't going to be without intimacy while he was deployed, and he'd accepted that if he enlisted, it would come with the territory. Greg shared how, a year after their wedding, he lost his job and couldn't find work for a long time. In the end, he decided to join the army to learn a new trade and take advantage of educational opportunities. Abby had been against it, but eventually, he convinced her. She had made it clear, though, that she wouldn't stay celibate while he was away. "I'm a realist," he said, "and I knew Abby's needs. That's why I suggested the arrangement that you and she ended up in." Greg continued, explaining that Abby liked me, but it was never a situation where she'd fall in love with me enough to leave her marriage. She wanted us to remain friends, and Greg wanted the same. "As a start," he said, "we're having a barbecue at our place this Sunday. Will you come?" I showed up, and though I thought it might be awkward being around both Abby and Greg, it turned out to be a pleasant experience, and we even became good friends. As for my dating life, I was still searching. Most of the women I dated were from school, and by this point, many had already been married or divorced. They were often the ones most responsive to my advances. I was still involved in plenty of relationships, but none that led to anything serious. A lot of these women knew Betty and Nancy, and they all seemed to keep in touch. Some even felt the need to update me on their lives. Nancy had married, had 2 children, and seemed happy in a nearby state. Betty, however, was not as fortunate. Betty's husband was a creepy alcoholic who was said to hit her when he got drunk. It was rumored that she wanted to leave him, but her family, especially her father, talked her out of it. They didn't want the stain of divorce on the family name. I always thought her father was a creep, and I'll admit that part of the reason was that he clearly didn't like me when I was dating his daughter. I was even harsh with him a couple of times when he expressed his dissatisfaction. Even at a young age, I realized that fate loved to toy with me, and it turned out that Betty's father would still be a part of my life. Our company was swallowed up by his corporation in a hostile takeover, and I knew that when he found out I was now working for him, he'd be thrilled to rub his hands together and say, "Got you, you little brat." It took a while, but 3 months after the takeover, my boss called me into his office and said that Mr. Gifford wanted to see me at 10 in the morning. "I don't know what he wants, but don't be late. He's very strict about punctuality." I got in the car, drove to the main company building, and entered his office at 9:55. I told his secretary my name, and she asked me to wait, saying Mr. Gifford would see me soon. Apparently, his punctuality didn't apply to himself, as he kept me waiting until after 9 o'clock. As I sat there, I mentally drafted my resume and made a list of places to send it to. Events did not unfold as I expected. He didn't apologize for the wait, but I didn't expect him to. He was a jerk, after all. He looked at me sternly and began, "My people have studied everything in your company, and they don't like what they see in your department." I was a split second away from standing up and telling him, "Go to hell, you an idiot, I'm quitting," when he continued, "It puts our other warehousing and logistics divisions to shame, and they thought we already had a better system. If you have no reason to say no, I'm taking you out of there, making you a senior manager, and putting you in charge of bringing our other facilities up to the same standards as you have at Apex." I was too stunned to speak. I think he took my silence as hesitation or disagreement, so he added, "This will include a 25% salary increase, a company car, a company credit card to cover gas and maintenance, and an entertainment budget." I wasn't foolish, so of course, I accepted the job. It turned out to not be that difficult. There was nothing seriously wrong with the warehousing and logistics of the corporation's other 9 facilities. There were 9 when I started. The main problem was their lack of communication with each other, and that was easy to fix. But in doing so, I ran into the biggest challenge, which I called the wall. The wall was the attitude of, "We've always done it this way, it works great, and there's no reason to change." I had to fire several people who resisted every change I made. This sent the message that things were going to be done my way now, and the resistance disappeared. The communication problem stemmed from the fact that the sites all had different computer systems, so they couldn't talk to each other and didn't have a clear idea of what they were doing or what they needed. The first thing I did was implement the same computer system across all sites, the one we had at Apex. The beauty of this system was that it linked to other departments, especially purchasing. Previously, if Site A needed 300 units of an item, they would contact multiple suppliers, get the best price, and place an order. Now, if Site A needed 300 units, they would log in, see that Site D made that part, and make an internal request. This saved the company a lot of money. It might sound ridiculous that a corporation with a full staff of CPAs and senior executives hadn't figured this out before I arrived, but it was true, or maybe someone did figure it out, but their superiors blocked it because they didn't want to give up control of their little kingdoms. I didn't have that problem because I had Mr. Gifford, the big boss, backing me. Like I said, it wasn't difficult, but it took time. Implementing the computer system and changing some processes to work with it took almost 9 months to get all 12 facilities in order. There were 12 by the time I finished. However, the system began showing positive financial results within the first 3 months after installation. As I went from site to site doing my job, I inevitably had to visit the facility where Betty was working. She had gone to work for her father after graduating, and I wasn't prepared for the moment when I finally saw her. I was walking down the corridor when she came out of an office and turned in my direction. Our eyes met, and I saw the shock on her face. She quickly returned to the office she had just left. For a second, I thought about following her, but I quickly decided that nothing good would come of it, and it might end in trouble, so I continued on my way. I didn't see her again on subsequent visits. In my new role as logistics support manager, I began receiving invitations to corporate events. Usually, these were cocktail parties for clients and suppliers, but sometimes they were promotional dinners or awards ceremonies. It was at one of these ceremonies that my life changed again. It should be noted that I wasn't particularly fond of such events, but as a member of management, I had to attend them. Sometimes you could avoid them if you had a good reason, but for this event, I received direct instructions to attend from Mr. Gifford himself. The event was scheduled for a Wednesday evening, and when I arrived at my office on Tuesday, I had a message to call Mr. Gifford as soon as I got in. I did so, and his secretary immediately connected me with him. He got straight to the point. "I need you to be at the ceremony tomorrow, so don't try to avoid it. I know you don't like these types of events, but I need you to be at this one." "Fine." "Yes, sir. I'll be there," I replied. When I arrived at the banquet hall at the Hilton, I knew that seating was usually unassigned at these events, except for the main table where all the bosses sat. I took a seat at the back of the room. Mara, Mr. Gifford's assistant, entered the hall, saw me, and hurried toward me. "You can't sit here, Mr. Bailey," she said. There was no way she could have called me Jack. "You must sit at the main table." She took my hand and literally pulled me out of my seat, leading me to the main table. Sure enough, there was a sign with my name on it. Mara actually sat me down and told me not to leave, promising she'd be back soon. A few minutes later, she returned with my usual drink, a large vodka tonic with a slice of lime, and set it in front of me. I took a sip and asked, "Well, Mara, tell me what's going on here?" "All I know is that the boss told me to make sure you sit where he wants you, and that's here." She walked away to take care of other things, leaving me to sit and wonder what was going on. Soon, the room began to fill up, and others who usually sat at the main table began to take their seats. I received a few "what are you doing here" looks, which was exactly what I was asking myself. I noticed that the seats to my right and left remained empty. Then, the mystery was solved. Mr. Gifford entered the hall with his wife, Annabelle, and daughter, Elizabeth, Betty. Annabelle sat to my left, and Betty to my right. The mystery of the seating arrangement was solved, only for more questions to arise. What was Mr. Gifford up to? I looked at Betty's mother, then at Betty herself, and back at her mother. Annabelle smiled at me, patted my leg, and said, "Yes, Jack, you were set up." My face must have expressed complete confusion because Mrs. Gifford laughed and said, "Wipe that stupid look off your face, young man. You should have known that Jasper arranged for you and Betty to start talking again." I looked at Betty again. She shrugged and said, "I'm just as surprised as you. I didn't even know you'd be here." I wasn't going to go, but Mom and Dad insisted. "What will your husband say?" I asked. She raised her left hand, and I saw she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. "He's in the past," she said. The next question should have been, "How do you feel about this setup?" "It's awkward," she replied, "but I'm really glad about it." "And you?" Before I could answer, the official events began. After all the speeches and other formalities, the wall between our hall and the next one was removed, opening access to the bar, dance floor, and orchestra. Mrs. Gifford said, "Now you're on your own. Be good." She stood up, walked over to her husband, and they were the first to step onto the dance floor when the orchestra began to play. I looked at Betty and asked, "Now that your mom's not around, how do you really feel about this setup?" "It's awkward," she said, "but I'm really glad about it." "And you?" "You just surprised me," I admitted. "A long time ago, your father clearly didn't want us to be together, and now he's okay with this?" "I'm also surprised that you're divorced. Last I heard, your father was insisting you not get a divorce, so as not to tarnish the family name." "Where did you hear that, and from whom?" she asked. I told her, and she said, "That's complete nonsense. The part about Bernie being an abusive alcoholic is true, but it wasn't my father who kept me from getting a divorce. It was all my fault. I constantly blamed myself for Bernie's behavior. I thought it was because of something I was doing wrong and tried to fix it, hoping we would eventually have a happy life. If I'd had any common sense back then, I would have realized what a man he was when he threw a tantrum over the prenuptial agreement my father insisted on. My father was the one who finally pushed me to get a divorce. He hired a private detective who found out that Bernie had a mistress. They even recorded a few of their encounters, and listening to him badmouth me while they were having an intimate finally made me do it. As for why my father arranged this, she continued, I can only guess. Yes, he didn't want us to be together back then. He didn't think you were right for me, and he wanted what was best for me. But a few months ago, I had dinner with my mom and dad at Marco's. I'd been divorced for a little over a year, living with them, and not dating anyone. You were there with Abby, and I couldn't take my eyes off you. Dad noticed this and asked if I was thinking about what could have been. I started crying, got up, and ran out of the restaurant. I've been depressed ever since, and I think Dad arranged it to try and get me out of my blues. I sat and listened, thinking everything over. I was still single, mostly because I had never found a girl who could make me feel the way I felt when I was with Betty. I had approached this twice, but both women were married to men they intended to stay with. Looking at her, I realized that I wanted her, but the question was whether we could be together again. The only way to find out was to try. Do you want to dance? I asked. You owe something to start off right. Some may question whether this qualifies as a loving wife. Aren't Gail and Abby loving wives?
Write how you like one story and start listening to right now.
New husband, old husband, doctor, how can these three people be related? Today's story with a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. For a moment, I sat there, studying the face of the girl I had once considered close. She had changed so much in the months since we last met. Sure, some of these changes were probably caused by teenage hormones, but most of them were the result of her mother and that idiot. Another year, and she would be unrecognizable, no longer the happy daughter I had once raised. She probably doubted whether I had heard her question before her mother and foster father had time to arrive. She looked at me with an eye on her, and the disdainful smile that appeared on her face was far too reminiscent of Dr. Jerk for my taste. "What's so funny?" I asked. She repeated, "Mackenzie, don't be so rude," her mother began as she walked through the door. Then she saw me. "Oh, Terry," she looked at me for a few seconds, and her face changed. Dr. Jerk, Stephen Morrison, noticed me too, but before he could say anything, maintaining her developing grin, which was almost identical to his new daughter's, Mackenzie stepped forward and showed me that we were truly no longer related. "Don't worry, Mom. No matter what I say to him," she pointed at me, "it won't be rude." I decided that since this idiot was laughing, I'd find out what was so funny. I was amazed by the language she was using. The idiot looked at me, then laughed when he heard Mackenzie's words and saw the expression on my face. He could hardly contain his joyful expression. Several morning customers in the cafe looked at the teenager being disrespectful and shook their heads, but I was surprised by one thing: Carol looked embarrassed. I shook my head, collected my thoughts, and sighed. I looked at all three of them, then stared at my former daughter. "What I'm laughing at, Mackenzie, is not what you should be worried about," I said, with a simple response. Dr. and Mackenzie gathered, ready to attack me. Dr. Jerk, in particular, began to tense his body, moving his shoulders as if preparing for a fight. Thinking the situation might escalate, I switched apps on my phone, clicked on record video, and put the phone in my t-shirt pocket. The top of the phone was sticking out, and the camera lens was pointed in the direction I was looking. I probably looked stupid, but now I had a recording just in case. "What did you say, idiot?" Mackenzie repeated. Now she had a smug smile on her face, as if she were bullying a child on the school playground. I looked at her like some strange child from the street who was rude to me but clearly asking for a slap on the wrist. "Mackenzie, where did you learn to be so disrespectful in a public place?" I shook my head, getting up from my seat and standing in front of her. "I don't understand how you can be so rude that you disgust everyone who looks at you." I pointed to other visitors in the cafe. For a moment, her arrogance faded as she realized what I was saying. She looked around with alarm as she saw the looks from people staring at her, some nodding in agreement with my remark. I looked at her, put my hands on my hips, and said in a stern father's voice, "I ask you, young lady, when did it become the norm to treat people with such disrespect in a public place, no matter who they are or how you feel about them? I raised you differently." Now she looked unsure, but then the idiot intervened. He tensed up, putting on airs. "Mackenzie can call you in because she's my daughter, not yours." He bared his teeth again. "It's not disrespectful to call like you whatever you want, no matter the place. Besides, cuckold," he chuckled at his remark. "I thought since your wife and daughter left you for me, the bigger man," he puffed out his fat chest, tapping his plump pecs, "you couldn't handle it here, so you ran away at the first opportunity. So what the hell are you doing back in my town?" Now he proudly walked around the cafe, behaving like the dictator of a small country. As for me, I began to feel anger, which I tried to suppress. I was strongly built and well-muscled, having spent years as a laborer on construction sites. Even in my new job as a quality manager at Theating, I still did a lot of hard work helping the staff. As a result, I maintained my shape and muscle mass. The idiot, by comparison, was short and chubby. He was a surgeon at Matlin Hospital, and for some reason, he had a superiority complex when it came to me. That never went away. Perhaps it was because he had cheated on me for 2 years with Carol, my now ex-wife. He convinced her to leave me, Or maybe because he and Carol had convinced Mackenzie to betray me and let him adopt her, taking away everything I held dear. So, he thought he was better than me. Or maybe he felt he was better than me because I was just a plumber and he was a doctor. But in a fair fight, I would have knocked him down in a few seconds. He was simply too stupid and had too much of a complex to understand that. By this time, several customers, tired of this scene, had left. I must admit, I would have done the same if I were in their place. The cafe staff stood there, not knowing where to look. Carol looked a little uncomfortable but still stood next to the idiot. Mackenzie perked up again after her adoptive father's tirade against me. I sighed for the third time in as many minutes and thought that a gentle approach might diffuse the situation. "It's none of your business." "I came to visit my parents," I said. The idiot laughed. "Oh yes, poor excuses for grandparents who rejected my beautiful daughter when I brought her to them." He grinned smugly, feeling superior. My face turned red, and I would have knocked him out within seconds of that comment if the waitress at the counter hadn't called my name, looking a little alarmed at the rising tension. This brief distraction allowed me to suppress my anger and prevent him from realizing that I was ready to hit him next. Taking a deep breath, I said to myself, moving away from this annoying trio, "I'm leaving." I walked up to the counter, picking up food and coffee. I apologized to the poor, anxious girl behind the counter. She gave me a small smile, grateful for my comment. "Okay, I'm leaving now," I said, making sure it looked like I was addressing everyone in the room. But it was primarily for the recording that was happening in my pocket. I said nothing else as I walked past everyone, including my 3 opponents, quickly stepping out into the early Saturday morning air. I hoped that the confrontation was over. I could have walked away and chalked this meeting up as a failure, but no, Dr. Jerk just had to keep pushing. When I was a dozen steps away from the cafe, he turned to follow me and shouted, "Hey, where do you think you're going?" He spat. "I'm not done with you yet, and you won't leave until I tell you to." He was almost dancing, trying to catch up with me. "Now that your patrons aren't here to protect you, you are in my city, and you will do what I say." He, of course, meant William and Martha, who had caused him trouble after our first meeting. I turned around, looking at him, tilting my head to the side. The guy was just crazy. He held Carol's hand, and Mackenzie followed. For her part, Mackenzie's arms were crossed over her chest in the pose of a rebellious teenager. Even though I didn't mean to, I tried again to defuse the situation, if not for anything else, then at least for the record. I said the words that, even as they left my lips, made me feel like I was going to puke. "Listen, Stephen, I don't want any trouble. If that's what you want to hear, fine, you win. My wife and daughter," I looked at them and then back at the idiot, "betrayed me in the coldest way and chose you over me. I lost, and now I don't want to be near any of you." I looked at Mackenzie and felt a pain in my chest, bitterness at what I had lost. "In less than a year, you managed to turn one of my greatest achievements into a selfish, cunning little brat who, by the time she becomes an adult, will wonder why she has a dozen different boyfriends and why none of them will stay with her for more than a month." Mackenzie's hands dropped, and she turned a little pale, as did her mother. Inside the cafe, she'll wonder why her friends only want to talk to her when they need something, and why they'll ignore her if she ever wants to have a heart-to-heart with them if they don't have anything to gain from it. Dr. Jerk laughed. "You're an idiot." "A cuckold," he replied. "My daughter will have her pick of guys, and she can date whoever she wants for as long as she wants. And as for friends, since she is my daughter, not the daughter of a pathetic plumber, she already has more friends than she can count, compared to what happened when she was with you. And she's not selfish." He leaned toward me and quietly said, "And all this is thanks to me." I shook my head. This pathetic semblance of fatherhood had no idea. He thought that being a father was about making them look good or that his presence would make them better people. I bet helping her is something he's never even considered. The scary thing was that he would probably lash out at either Carol or Mackenzie when he didn't get what he wanted at some point. Unfortunately, his little speech and mockery of me encouraged both Mackenzie and Carol. At the mention of privilege, Carol stopped being ashamed of her daughter's behavior and joined in. Carol looked me up and down, first at my casual shorts and t-shirt, the flip-flops on my feet, and then at my truck, and shook her head. "You talk about behavior, but you should think about your appearance." Look at you, Terry. It's been less than a year since our divorce, and you're dressed like a hobo. And you're driving the same old truck." She then chuckled. "I bet you don't even have a job, and you moved back in with your parents because you spent all your divorce money." I shook my head again, sadness creeping in. They had no idea. And of course, Dr. Jerk couldn't help himself and jumped in, thinking that Carol had described my situation correctly. "Ha! So it turns out you're such a pathetic loser that you spent all your money," he said happily. "I hope this doesn't include my daughter's university money." He shook his head in mock piety. "How ashamed your mom and dad must be for such a bad example of a son. No wonder my girls left you for me." I growled, "My parents have nothing to do with it, and it's not her money, and it's not yours." "What I do with it is none of your business," I said firmly but quietly. A warning of my growing anger was missed. "What the hell is that, you little idiot?" he almost exploded at me. "It's funny calling me petty while you're forced to look up to me. You should have just handed it over when you had to and then gotten the hell out of whatever hole you damn plumbers are going to." He sniffed the air in my direction, thinking he had a sense of humor. "I bet it smells like piss and, just like you." He put on a mock noble accent and threw out his plump hands in a feigned gesture of generosity. "I saved these poor maidens, pulled them out of the filth in which you lived. I gave them a purpose." Then he lowered his hands and gave me a death glare, trying to intimidate me. "That money wasn't yours. It was my daughter's. You should have given it to us," he growled, then smiled. "But don't worry, the courts will decide that it's mine," he said triumphantly, referring to his recent attempt to sue me for a large sum of money that I had saved over the years for Mackenzie's university education. Unfortunately for them, the courts decided that since Mackenzie wanted to be adopted by the jerk and I was the only one who ever deposited money into the account, they weren't entitled to the significant amount of money in it. My hand began to squeeze the lunch bag and the cardboard tray of coffee, and I was getting more and more irritated by the second. This pathetic man was just a piece of trash, and I was sure this whole show was to try and provoke me. He seemed to have gained some more weight since I saw him in the hospital almost a year ago. I counted to 10, breathing in and out, as I looked at him. Carol, for the second time that morning, turned pale. She had seen me angry several times, and although I had only been in a fight a couple of times in my life, she knew I could fight back if necessary. She knew this could end badly and placed her hand on her new husband's thick forearm. "Stephen, dear, let's leave the poor man alone. He's already feeling bad about losing Mackenzie and me." Perhaps her words should have calmed him down, but they only cheered him up. He exclaimed and laughed. "Yeah, he lost. I won. But you know what? If I ever deal with so bad that I need a plumber, I'll let you know. But if you don't give me that money, don't come near any hospital near me. Otherwise, I'll make sure you're given the wrong medicine and you'll never come out." I was stunned. He just threatened to kill me if I had to go to the hospital. "Did you just threaten me, Dr. Morrison?" With all my being, I wanted to hit him so that he would fly away next Tuesday, but I needed to remain calm and in control, for the record. Mackenzie immediately decided to intervene and continue the verbal attack, which was not very smart of her. "My father doesn't make threats, you idiot. If he says, 'Don't go to his hospital or you'll never leave,' then that's a promise," she spat. "She's right," the idiot said, nodding his head with an air of importance. It seemed he didn't understand what he was saying. Even if I didn't have the tape, though I certainly did, simply accusing him of threatening someone in the hospital would have been a scandal from which he would never have recovered. But he couldn't keep his stupid mouth shut and continued. "That's a promise. No one will know when I give you the wrong pills. Without your rich ERs, no one will even question me." He took a step toward me, raising his fist. "You dared, with that of your sister, to threaten me on my territory, in my hospital, you freak. You got me on probation for 2 years. 2 years with no extra pay, but I still have to work all hours. So, you owe me, and I'll get it out of your skin, or your blood. So, no, it's not a threat." He opened his arms wide. "You're dead because I'm the king here, and you're just a plumber that no one in the world cares about. If they did, my girls wouldn't be with me, right?" He dropped his hands and turned to leave, but then quickly spun around and swung his fat hand upward, knocking my coffee tray into my face, spilling hot liquid all over me. He smiled, then turned and walked away. "Come on, girls, let's leave this plumber in the dirt where he belongs." Mackenzie walked away with the idiot, but Carol walked over to me as I bent down to pick up the overturned cups, now almost empty, but I couldn't leave any trash on the ground. She stood with her hands on her hips and stared at me. Her gaze itself was such that she tried to melt me if she could. "You couldn't leave it alone, could you, Terry?" she said in an annoyed tone. I stood up, covered in hot coffee, and turned to my ex-wife. "Leave what, Carol? Us? Him?" I gestured wildly. "You just had to provoke Stephen, right? Just understand, Mackenzie and I are his now, not yours." I stood up again, sliding my phone from my front shirt pocket into my shorts pocket. I sighed, having done this many times this morning. "Carol, I don't know if you witnessed the same conversation as me, but I tried to leave several times. I never spoke in a derogatory manner to you, Mackenzie, or your pathetic version of a husband." I looked at her and noted for the record, and in no way did I threaten him or raise my fists at him, as he did towards me. My phone was still recording in my shorts pocket. I hoped it captured this part of the conversation. She shook her head. "It doesn't matter. I chose him over you, and your presence makes him angry, thinking that I could leave him and come back to you." I laughed at her. "My presence made him angry? Really? You chose a narcissistic fat ball of lard over me?" I smiled in bewilderment and shook my head. "Tell him he has nothing to worry about. I would never take a cheating like you back into my life." She took a step back after my rebuke. "Do you really think I'll ever take you back?" "Hell no! Someone who threw me away like yesterday's newspaper, without a second thought, after being together for so long? Do you think I'll ever take someone back who disrespected me so much back into his life?" I shook my head, dismissing her. "Go away, Carol. You disgust me." She still stood there, not knowing what to think about me. Perhaps she thought I could forgive her stupidity. I was sure that I would never forgive her. Maybe someday, in the distant future, I'd stop being so angry, but to forgive? I don't know if I'll ever be able to do that. If you thought I came back for you, then you are deceiving yourself. I only came back because of my mother. I began to speak without thinking, then stopped myself, almost talking about my mother's cancer. I looked at Carol. She caught this moment and looked at me with bewilderment, her gaze softening a little from a moment ago. "For what, Mommy's sake, Terry?" she asked, though I knew her words didn't mean much, considering everything that had happened. "Despite everything, you think I still care?" She tried to say, but all the evidence showed me otherwise. I glanced at her questioningly, then shrugged. "No, Carol, it doesn't matter now. You made your choice, and now you and your daughter have to live with him. But I warn you today, your husband crossed the line. Not only did you not say a word when those two attacked me with insults and threats, but you also joined in when it came to your precious money. Remember what I said? If you push me to the limit, you won't like it." Carol nodded. I saw her eyes widen, remembering our last conversation. "You did it," I said. Carol blushed, and without saying another word, I turned and walked over to my truck to get the towel I kept in the trunk to dry off. When I opened the truck door, Dr. Jerk called, or rather, screamed, for Carol to join him. Carol almost ran to him. By the time I finished drying myself, they were gone. Mon Central Cafe was very apologetic when I returned. They replaced the coffee for free, although I insisted on paying for the replacement. They told me that the Morrisons had been visiting the cafe for several months, and while they were friendly at first, they became increasingly sarcastic over time, humiliating several customers. I thanked them for the free coffee and their sympathy, then headed back to Mom and Dad's, which took me another 45 minutes. I grabbed a second batch of coffee and finally got home. When I returned, my mother was already on her feet. Kim and Paul had also arrived. Kim's baby bump was now visible, but pregnancy didn't calm my sister's passions. "What happened to you, Terry?" Kim asked, seeing my coffee-stained clothes and me. I unexpectedly met the unholy trinity of Carol, Mackenzie, and I replied, using my nickname for them so everyone could hear. "Did they do this to you?" Mom asked, also looking at me and the mess of coffee on me. Yeah, well, that did it, but Mackenzie in particular couldn't resist telling me what she was thinking. She's not the little girl I remember, I frowned. It seemed to me that I had cried all my tears because of them, but fresh tears appeared on my cheeks again when I remembered her contemptuous smirk and disrespect. My heart ached from the fact that I had seen her. I wanted to hug her and go back to what we once had, although I knew it would never happen again. Mom came up and hugged me tightly. Then, suddenly, in her hands was that napkin that, it seemed, all mothers always have on hand. I took a moment to thank her. I then handed Mom her weak latte, Dad his strong coffee, and each of them a cold breakfast. I took a sip of my new coffee and sat down on one of the kitchen chairs, careful not to stain the kitchen with my ruined clothes. It's okay, son. One day Mackenzie will wake up and realize what she lost, my dad tried to reassure me. Will she wake up, Dad? I asked. The disrespect and words she used against me today make me think otherwise. He'll wake up, son. He'll wake up, he answered, nodding his head. At that moment, my phone rang. I was still sipping my coffee, so I answered through speakerphone. Hey, our masculine handsome man, your girls miss you. But enough about our needs for your strong body, how is your morning? You didn't call us, Harmony said. I blushed. Everyone at the table looked at me, and a moment later, they all started laughing. Hey, girls, it's Kim here. Your manly hunk is turning bright red right now, but it's good to know my little brother can still take care of business. This time, everyone, including me, laughed. I found my voice. Sorry, my dears. It's a long story, and not a pleasant one. But can I call you back in 5 minutes? I need to clean my phone, it's covered in coffee after a spill, of course. Love, Melody replied cheerfully, laughing at my obvious discomfort. Call us back soon. They hung up, and everyone was looking at me, so Paul said, looking at me, Melody, Harmony, and you, aren't these just our fantasies? No, I'm dating both of them, I grinned at my brother-in-law. Kim snorted. And sleeping with both of them, at last, aren't you, Terry? I smiled at Paul and Kim, then shot a sharper glance at Mom and Dad, who were looking at me with almost judgment in their eyes. Of course, they were there when the girls ended up in my room, but to go from just sleeping in the same bed to having a night with 2 women, and even twins, I expected some kind of judgment. We were all a little surprised when Mom cleared her throat and spoke for me. Kim, cut him some slack. I have no doubt about what we've seen. If he's in an intimate relationship with these 2 wonderful girls, she emphasized the word wonderful, my son will be very respectful of them. I love them, guys, I said with a shrug. There's something with both of them that I never had with Carol, and it's inexplicable. It's just there. It's been there since the very first night I saved them. At first, it was hidden under gratitude, but it's there, and it's developed. Now, I can't think of anything else but spending time with them. Who knows? I hope it continues to grow. Paul smiled and repeated, so, you're sleeping with both of them? Oh my gosh, Paul, Kim said, laughing. He's sleeping with both of them, isn't he, little brother? Yes, with both, I answered. Paul asked, giving me that smirk that all guys give when they want to learn erotic details from a friend. I laughed. Yes, night with 2 incredibly beautiful red-haired identical twins who love me as much as I love them is incredible. He laughed at my blunt confession. Kim hit Paul hard on the back of the head, and I excused myself to clean my phone and call the girls back. As I stood up, Paul extended his hand to punch me, and I fist-bumped him, grinning. Well done, he said as I pulled my hand away and grabbed a kitchen towel to clean my phone. The call with the girls went well. I sat on my parents' back deck for the next half hour, sipping coffee and telling them everything that happened. They asked a lot of questions like, he said this, and she said that. When I told them about the conflict earlier that morning with my trio of haters, they could hardly believe that people could be so rude and insensitive, let alone that the child I was raising was involved. You know, Terry, if our kids ever talk to someone like that, I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way and wash their mouth out with soap, Melody said when I finished my story. Harmony and I laughed. I heard the girls moving around in the bathroom. Harmony was on shift this afternoon, so she was getting ready. Wait, our children? I asked, hearing everything go quiet. Then I heard them laugh. Yes, honey, at some point in the future, you will give us both children. We will be your mothers. You will never have to worry about another Mackenzie ruining your life again. We won't let that happen. I was stunned that they wanted children with me. Do you both want children from me? Something must have registered with them because they stopped laughing and Harmony intervened. Of course, our beloved, she said, using the twins' common address to me. You are our man, and we want to give you children to love. She paused. But not right now. Only when all three of us agree. There was a slight worry in her voice. Terry, are you okay? You don't mind having kids with us, do you? I thought for a moment. No, girls, I don't mind. Sorry if my reaction scared you, but honestly, I don't know where I am now on the issue of children. I'm already 34, and after what I saw today, with the way my daughter treats me, I don't think I'm ready yet. It's okay, honey, Melody reassured me. We understand. We shouldn't have started this conversation in the wake of a negative meeting with Mackenzie. I wish I had been there, I joked. I would have pounced on them and gouged out their eyes. I laughed as I imagined Melody turning into a ninja and attacking my former family. Thanks, honey. Well, I have a video of almost all of it, I added, and then it dawned on me. Wait, I have a video! I exclaimed. What do you mean? Harmony asked. Doctor. Threatened me, but I thought there might be trouble when I first saw them, so I turned on the recording on my phone in my pocket to record any encounter. I wasn't sure if this could be used in court, but talk to Kim and let us know, Terry, Melody said. And call us back. I have to leave for work in an hour, Harmony finished. Okay, my love, I will do so. I love you both, I said. Love you too, they both answered in unison, and we hung up. I returned to the house excited. I have it on video, I announced. Ugh, I don't want to see you in bed with your girlfriends, Kim said jokingly, then continued, and Paul, if you ever want to have a second child with me, don't open your mouth and don't say what you're going to say. Paul and I looked at each other and grinned. Then I looked at Kim. No, not that. Well, not this time, I winked at Paul. He laughed. No, I have a recording of my meeting with Dr. Jerk from earlier. What? How? Asked Kim. Mom, Dad, and Paul also looked at me with questions in their eyes. When I realized there was going to be trouble, I turned on the video and put the phone in my pocket. I may have recorded the entire conflict, including the Honorable Dr. Morrison's threat to me. With these words, we sat down and gathered around the screen of my phone to see what happened. The video kept jumping, but you could make out who was participating in this performance. The audio was a little choppy in some places as my phone's microphone rubbed against my pocket, but most of the conversation was pretty clear, except for the last part with Carol when I put the phone in my shorts pocket. That part could still be heard if you listen closely. Wow, Kim said when we finished watching. Damn, that's impressive. She sat back. Do you think Dr. Morrison is in as much trouble now as I think he is? My father asked. Kim replied with a big smile on her face. Oh yeah, he's in huge trouble. And since it was in a public place, the law doesn't prohibit filming it. She thought for a moment. There may be some issues with consent, but I'll make a few calls and take a look. She continued with a twinkle in her eye. The threat he made to you about the hospital could get his medical license revoked if it gets out, but if he openly stated that he would make sure you never left the hospital, he could face jail time. What about Mackenzie? I asked, with a hint of concern in my voice. Of course, I might want her out of my life for what she did, but that didn't mean I didn't care for her to some degree or want her to get into legal trouble. I don't know, Terry, Kim said. Mackenzie could be in serious trouble because of this. I nodded. I need to think. I paused. I understand this is probably a no-turn-back situation, but she was once my daughter, and she was once your niece. I know, brother, Kim answered. But as you told Carol, she made her choice. We talked about what had happened for a few more minutes before I excused myself to call my friends again, before Harmony left for work. I told them everything and said I would send the video tomorrow morning so they could watch it with me over the phone. We spent the rest of the day paying attention to Mom. She was recovering from her first round of chemotherapy and was feeling quite tired. Paul and I got busy cleaning up the yard and doing other small chores around the house that Dad didn't have time to do due to work and taking care of Mom during the week. During the day, we reminisced about the old times when Kim and I were kids. Mom laughed, telling the same story she had told earlier a few months ago, but she didn't mind. We were a family. Before going to bed, I called Melody, since Harmony was at work, and we talked for about an hour about nothing in particular. Tomorrow, Sunday, I plan to go to church with my mom and dad. Afterwards, we would have a traditional family lunch of fish and chips, and then have some fun. On Monday morning, I would go home so I'd be ready to work on Tuesday. The service on Sunday went well. I met several people I hadn't seen for a long time and received several condolences regarding what happened with Carol and Mackenzie. I felt like I might burn alive sitting in church, thinking about sleeping with two twins I was madly in love with. However, nothing happened, and I left the church without fire and brimstone. I did decide that I would talk to someone religious to see what God might really think about my relationship with Melody and Harmony. At the same time, at lunch, I was reminded again how good the local fish and chips were. While sitting at lunch with Mom, Dad, Paul, and Kim, I had the squid, which was handmade and simply melted in your mouth. I happily finished the last bite on my plate when there was a knock on the door. Of course, we weren't expecting anyone, and I admit my heart sank when I saw who it was outside. My former family stood waiting. Carol stood there looking upset, maybe a little worried, and Mackenzie, well, she just looked angry. I was glad there was no sign of Dr. Jerk. Finally, after we all looked at each other, my father opened the door. As soon as the door opened, Dad immediately began the conversation. "What do you want, Carol?" he asked. "I'm sure that after the way you treated Terry yesterday, this is the last place you should come." His tone was firm but polite. "I know, John," Carol began, clasping her hands. "But Terry said something yesterday, and I saw something in his eyes. I don't want you all to think that I don't care, but—" Her father interrupted her. "Carol, I'm sorry, but I honestly don't think you care. The way you both treated Terry yesterday was disgusting. I've never seen such disrespect for a person you once called your loved one." "I never said," Carol began, but again, her father interrupted her. "You didn't have to say anything, Carol. Terry has a video of this entire scene. We saw what you, Mackenzie, and your new husband did. Honestly, I'm ashamed that we ever called you family." "But John, Terry said something was wrong, and he didn't tell me what. So we thought we'd come and bury the hatchet and see if we could help." Carol tried to appear sincere, but her father wasn't buying it. "A little late to try to show any compassion, don't you think?" Dad shook his head. "No, Carol, you can't help, and frankly, we're not going to tell you what's going on. You haven't been family for a long time, and although this saddens me, this is a family matter, and it is not for strangers. You must understand that you and your daughter are now strangers to us. You have both disgraced yourselves and caused this family pain on a scale you cannot even imagine." He looked down at them. "And let's not even talk about how the cafe patrons left in disgust yesterday because of your obscene language and disrespect towards my son." I watched the entire exchange from my seat on the couch. I looked at Mackenzie. She didn't meet my eyes for more than a second but kept looking at me over and over while Dad and Carol were talking. I kept my face neutral, though anger and sadness raged inside me in almost equal measures. The conversation between my ex-wife and my father was almost over, and Carol spoke up. "Yes, John," she said, her voice a little nervous. "Terry is right about one thing. Neither of you seem to understand that everything you do and how your actions are perceived will not end well, especially for our family. You both burn bridges. You go alone without us, and now Mackenzie's problems are all yours." "What do you mean?" she asked in shock. I don't think she realized until that moment that by getting rid of me, they were also losing my family. "Your daughter." Dad looked sharply at the woman she used to call Pa. "Mackenzie is not on the right track. If you don't help her get rid of the selfishness and disrespect for people that your husband encourages, she will be very lonely when she grows up. Mackenzie jumped up. It's not fair. It's fair, Mackenzie, Dad said firmly. I saw the video. I saw how you treated the man who raised you. I saw how you treated him. I'm terrified for you. He spat. All my son has ever done is love you both. These expensive clothes and shiny things you're wearing now will eat you up, bit by bit. You're trading your soul for shiny things that won't bring you happiness, young lady. Carol lowered her eyes, again feeling a sense of shame. Mackenzie looked past her grandfather at me and opened her mouth again. She was trying to seem important to me. Yes, but these. She gestured to her clothes, some of the arrogance from the previous morning returning. These are things that no plumber could ever provide, she started, looking at me pompously. My new father takes me places, gives me gifts, and doesn't have to dig in dirt or clean other people's toilets to make a living. That terrible grin I had seen yesterday appeared on her face again. Dad nearly exploded. Mackenzie, let me remind you what I do for a living. I dig in the dirt and clean other people's toilets too. So does that mean I'm just as disgusting to you? Am I as bad as the one you are now looking at with contempt, whose only fault is that he loved you? She fell silent, her face suddenly dropping as the weight of her words sank in. Of course not, Pa, she mumbled. You're a good plumber. She was trying to recover. She didn't expect that her grandfather's profession would cause conflict. So tell me, Mackenzie, Dad pressed, if I am a good plumber and my son, whom you once loved and called Daddy, is a bad plumber, what's the difference between us? His neck was slightly red, and I could tell there was a lot of anger inside him that he was trying not to let out. Mackenzie looked confused, and Carol intervened, constantly misinterpreting the conversation and trying to deflect blame. Enough, John. Don't torment the girl. We all know it's Terry's fault. He just ran away when he should have made peace with us. He could have been a part of our lives. Dad shook his head. It is not my son's fault, and I'm tired of hearing it from you. Grow up already, Carol. Everyone gasped. Do you think Terry should have stayed and reminded himself every day of how you both betrayed him? So you could rub it in his face every time you see him? He leaned in a little closer. Or how you tried to extort money from him. Money he saved, money you demanded, even after you threw the fact of adoption in his face? Give the man some dignity. He worked tirelessly every day to take care of you. Mackenzie intervened again, and her words cut me to the core. But he could see me. I wanted him to see me. I don't care that Stephen is just a better father and a better person. I wouldn't cut my dad out of my life forever. Mom said that this would only be until I was adopted, then Dad could see me again. Mackenzie almost begged. I thought it sounded rude, but there was a crack in her armor. This was the first time since yesterday morning in the cafe that I had heard her call me Dad. I almost broke down and ran to her, but my pain held me back. I had told them I would mourn them, and I still did. Dad was angry, like a thundercloud with lightning and thunder ready to fall. Both Carol and Mackenzie took a step back. Do you think this pathetic semblance of a man is the best father? Dad yelled. What planet do you live on? He's not the father. He clenched his fists, like I had done yesterday, but then he lowered his voice, gaining control of himself. It's already been a year since you quit. No, don't look at me like that. You abandoned your father. The only time you turn to him is when you need something. And just now, just 15 seconds ago, I heard you disrespecting him again. You humiliated him in front of you. You called my son a bad father. He was seething now. You both keep bragging about this doctor, your new father, your mother's new husband. But have either of you, he looked at them both, thought once about wondering if Terry was okay? He paused for a second. You had your new family. Who was Terry? He had you. He had Ma, Uncle Paul, and Aunt Kim. Mackenzie replied, the father nodded. Yes, you're right. He was. And we saw him often, but this was only a few times a week. Most of the time, he was home alone with no family to come home to, and a restraining order preventing him from fighting for his family. Not once, did you think about him or how he must have felt. Both of you thought only of yourselves. Everyone fell silent, stunned by their father's words. My father very rarely swore, even at work. The fact that he did so earlier showed just how angry he was. We all felt it. He had almost done it in front of his granddaughter. His fists were clenched tightly, his skin turned white. Carol and Mackenzie looked a little pale themselves. His voice became quiet again. My son left because you thought only of yourselves. You saw something that seemed better to you, money. And to my deep shame, both of you rushed to it, leaving love behind. But by leaving him, you also left us, he hissed. I stood up and walked to the door, placing my hand on my father's shoulder. I needed to stop this before it went any further. It's okay, Dad. You go back inside. I'll walk Carol and Mackenzie to their car. He turned and looked at me, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. He nodded to me, patted the hand I had placed on his shoulder, and then went inside. I motioned for the former family members to walk ahead of me. They walked, their posture somewhat diminished. As we approached Carol's car, a new and improved Lexus, I noticed they turned to me. Lady, I said calmly, before they could say anything. I don't know what you were hoping to achieve by coming here today, but after yesterday, you should have known this wasn't going to end well. Terry, Carol began. No, Carol, I interrupted. You weren't thinking. This is my family, not yours. Now, if you want, go talk to your parents or him. They knew I meant him. But Terry, Stephen's parents died many years ago, and my parents live in England. You don't want your daughter to never see her grandparents again, do you? Her voice was soft at first but became hard towards the end. She continued, Mackenzie is racked with guilt over all of this. When you deny her access to you, when you turn her grandparents against her, when you deny her access to the money that belongs to her. I raised my hand. Carol stopped. She knew that when I did that, it wouldn't be pleasant. I had only done this a few times, even when we were married, but she stopped. I continued speaking quietly. You again place blame where there is none. You never take responsibility for your actions. I looked at my former daughter. Mackenzie. Yes, Daddy, she said, a hint of trembling in her voice. What's your name, Mackenzie? Dad, you know it, she said. No. Full name. Mackenzie Rossi. Odor. She started to say other but stopped. Morrison, she said, looking down. I nodded. Morrison, I repeated. I looked at Carol. So, you see, her last name is Morrison, not Odor. Do you have any idea what you did to me, Dad? I never. Carol reached out and stopped her. Yes, Terry, she said, trying to sound calm. We understood that we hurt you, but we thought that with time you would be able to get over it. Mackenzie just wanted her father. Do you know how she cried for you every night for the first month? Carol added, as if trying to make me look bad. This upset me. No, Carol, I said, my voice growing louder. I didn't know that, but then you know exactly why I didn't know she was upset, don't you? She lowered her eyes, knowing exactly what I was going to say. Restraining order, I spat, with a little venom in my voice. That damn restraining order. I couldn't talk to my daughter. I couldn't ask her how her day was. I wasn't allowed to hug her, give her advice, or even be in the same room with her. And let's not even talk about how I was ignored on my birthday. I was broken. But it's more likely that neither of you even thought about it. I paused, my voice shaking with emotion. There was nothing I could do. And as I told you that day, what you both did was planned, cold-blooded, and calculated to cause me maximum pain. Pain I was now raging with. But I tried to speak quietly. But this pain was encouraged by the new man in your life. I took another deep breath, struggling to maintain my composure. I told you last time that you both tore my heart out, and to this day, it hurts in the very depths of my soul. The only way I could survive was to move away, to get away from the pain you caused me. I still mourn you both, and even now, talking to you, I feel such anguish that if I let my guard down, I would explode. Both women had tears on their faces, but I didn't stop. I took another deep breath and continued, my voice quieter now but still filled with emotion. What killed me the most was that the day you both left me, my old world died. The morning you left, you acted like everything was fine. Do you know why I never noticed what you were planning to do? I looked at them. They both looked at me timidly and shook their heads, not knowing. Stupid love, I said. I let that statement hang in the air for a moment. I loved you both with everything I had. I trusted you both with my life, and I trusted that you would both support me. That, in exchange for my love, you would do the same. Daddy, I still love you, Mackenzie blurted out. I focused my attention on my ex-daughter-in-law. Mackenzie lowered her eyes to the floor again. She didn't say anything. Mackenzie, do you remember what you called me? I asked firmly. After a moment, she nodded slightly, barely noticeable. Yes, she said, almost in a whisper. How? I asked. What did you call me, if not Dad? She looked up at me for a second, then looked down again. There must have been something interesting there because the way they both looked, I could tell. You idiot, she said quietly, almost with a feeling of shame. I nodded. You called me the one you now call Daddy and say you love. Do you understand why I'm confused? Do you understand why I doubt your love for me? Today, you say you love me, but yesterday, you screamed insults at me. And let's not forget that you threatened me. You basically said it would be okay if they killed me. My voice was still quiet but intense. But, Dad, it was. She stopped. She couldn't finish. It wasn't a very pleasant thing. Carol sighed for her daughter. But Terry, what do you want? It's not like you can live without seeing your daughter. I glanced at my ex-wife. Carol, you're no better right now. You feel guilty and ashamed, but yesterday, you encouraged your daughter just as much as that pathetic man you now call husband. As I already told you, I grieve for both of you as if you were dead. Mackenzie gasped, remembering my words. Everything you both did, every action you took, cost me so much. And not once did either of you show any remorse. I paused for a moment and looked at them questioningly. When neither of them said anything, I asked, Mackenzie, what will happen next time I see you? Am I going to be a jerk again, or a dad? You will be a dad, Mackenzie stated, her tears streaming down her cheeks. I didn't know if they were because of how she treated me, or because she was being scolded. This is the problem with the loss of trust, the glass through which you see emotions has cracked. Mackenzie continued, I'm sorry, Dad. I shouldn't have said what I said. But I promise I will behave better next time. I nodded. We'll see, Mackenzie. Right now, I am very far from trusting you. I admit that I still have love for you in my heart, but it is buried under a ton of pain and a significant amount of anger. What you did yesterday, the words you spoke, and the way you supported the threats against me are not easily forgotten and destroy any love left in my heart for you. It doesn't take long for it to completely disappear. Mackenzie was now openly crying, and I turned my attention to my ex-wife. What about you, Carol? What about me? She looked at me for a few seconds, then sighed. Terry, I never thought it would be like this, but I don't know, maybe we'll sit down and talk soon. It's all a complete mess. Sorry, Carol, but there will be no gatherings. Tomorrow morning, I return to my new life. They looked at me. No, I won't tell you about it, but I have a chance to be happy, and I'm going to take it. Do you have a new girlfriend, Dad? Mackenzie asked, a questioning look flashing across her face behind the tears. You have no right to know this, Mackenzie, just as you have no right to know about the family business that brought you here today, I said, looking at Carol. That's why you're here, right? Or is it about money? Both girls looked away in embarrassment, and I snorted. That's what I thought. Look, ladies, I think this conversation is over. If we continue, it will come down to money, and I'm sure that's the real reason you're here. This conversation will not end pleasantly for either of us, so let's break up now before anything else happens. Carol sighed. Okay, Terry. But you know the conversation isn't over yet. She looked at me expectantly. The note of regret and remorse in her voice had disappeared, and now there was a hidden threat in her tone. She didn't understand anything. "I know, Carol," I said. "But as I told you yesterday, you keep pushing. And if you don't stop going down this path, you won't like what you see next. So take this as fair warning." Carol's face hardened, not getting the reaction she wanted. "You understand that Stephen will destroy you," she said, her voice rising. "You will be left with nothing. I'm at least trying to save you some dignity before he ends things with you. Believe me, it is better to give us what we ask now than to remain not only a cuckold, an ex-father, and an ex-husband, but also a beggar who will regret not accepting our generosity when it was offered to you." I laughed out loud. This woman could change her mood and emotional state at the snap of her fingers. How did I not notice this before? Mackenzie looked a little scared. She seemed genuinely remorseful, and after trying to apologize to me, she found herself between me and her mother again. Carol looked at me sternly, questioningly, not understanding why I ignored her hidden threat and, moreover, why I laughed in her face. I stopped and looked at Carol, my treacherous and unfaithful ex-wife, the former keeper of my heart and soul, the betrayer of my love, and the rejecter of my attention. With every twisted expression of endearment thrown at her, she grew pale again. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," I said, my voice colder. "I say this so that you understand the emotions and motivations behind what I say next." Carol looked at me, fear flashing in her eyes. Mackenzie froze in place, barely daring to breathe. "I am not the person you betrayed and left behind," I said, my voice rising. "I was broken and in more physical and emotional pain than you can comprehend. But the worst thing is that the three of you continue to pressure me." I raised my voice. "I'll tell you here and now, so you can tell your short, fat fifth-place husband that none of you have any idea what I'm capable of. You insult and tease me by talking about dignity? Your threat is empty and shows how petty and pathetic you have become. You say you will destroy me? I don't think you have any idea what will happen if you all don't back down," I growled, leaning toward Carol. "So tell that idiot to come take you and my ex-daughter-in-law by a much more pleasant mood. So now, I won't wish you ladies a happy farewell, but I won't curse you as you go." I stepped back, indicating that the conversation was over. They looked at me for a moment, but Carol finally realized that I wouldn't say anything more. She took Mackenzie's hand and led her to the car. Then, she got into the car and started the engine. Mackenzie rolled down the window, looking at me with tears in her eyes. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said. My heart was breaking again. Damn. No matter what those words told me, I still had love for her in my heart. I nodded, trying not to show any emotion. "I really want to believe that you're sorry, Mackenzie, but let your actions show your determination to show me how much you're sorry. And don't ever let me see you act like you did yesterday again." "Okay, I will try," she said, though it wasn't the decisive words I wanted. "Don't try, Mackenzie. Just do it. Goodbye." I walked down the driveway of the house as they drove away. As I reached the porch and watched them disappear from sight, I felt my mother's arms wrap around me from behind. "Are you okay?" she asked. I thought for a moment. This was both much harder and much easier than I'd thought, but at least we weren't yelling at each other, though I thought it was very close. As my mother released me from her embrace, she pulled me back into the living room where we all sat down again. "What are we going to do now?" Mom asked. I summarized the conversation between Carol, Mackenzie, and myself for my family. Kim, my sister, was in lawyer mode, and we all looked at her when I finished. She was holding a glass of red wine in her hands, though she didn't drink it due to the early stages of pregnancy. She simply held it, thinking about something. "I'm sure Paul will drink it for her later," I said, and Kim gave me a pointed look before continuing. "So, I think we need to prepare a lawsuit regarding the threat of bodily harm made to Terry by Dr. Name. Regardless of everything else, what he did yesterday is a huge professional no-no. Carol's other threats and words toward you have no legal basis that could be seriously considered in court, but you also need to consider that any action on your part could kill any remaining affection you have for Carol or Mackenzie." I looked at my family. I have no love left in me for Carol. She's taken a big step toward us ever having a civil conversation again. But Mackenzie? I don't know. My family sensed the conflict in me, and although I was so hurt by what my ex-daughter-in-law had done, I got sympathetic nods from everyone. Finally, I looked at Kim again. I think we should go after Dr. Name. How long will it take to prepare, and this guy you're talking about? I asked my older sister. A few weeks, maybe a month, she replied. I'll need to review the video and make sure we have clear evidence of a threat against you. But if done correctly, he will suffer greatly. You might even be able to get compensation for your damages. Well, I don't need any more money, I said. I have a great job, and I'm sure my girls are rich. We all laughed. We knew that the Dottie's family was well off. But all jokes aside, I continued, I don't want to rely on them. I gestured to my family. Have our pride. We are responsible for ourselves. We fight our own battles. Things like that. I looked at my family. I love my girls, but I need to fight my own battles. Everyone nodded. Kim looked at her dad. Dad, I know you wanted the best, but I'm sorry, you mentioned the video. Sorry, he said. Kim patted his hand. Oh, and Dad, she added with a smile, I don't know where you learned that kind of language when you were talking to Carol, but express yourself. She waved her finger, and everyone laughed. We sat and continued our family conversation for the rest of the day. We talked about Mom's cancer treatment, discussed my relationship with the girls, talked about Kim's pregnancy, and spent a lot of time discussing what to do with Carol, Mackenzie, and Dr. Name. Later in the day, I received a text from an unknown number. I will destroy everything that is dear to you, you idiot. You are a corpse, a cuckold. Do you hear me? A corpse. I must have struck a nerve with Dr. Name, because I don't think there was any doubt who sent the message. I wanted to respond, but instead, I showed it to Kim, who laughed and took a photo of the message along with the number, time, and date for proof. We spent a few more minutes discussing why he felt so threatened by me. Everyone knew that I was never going to go back to Carol. I had a laugh with Kim when we talked about how he might feel threatened in the bedroom. Later that afternoon, I called my girls and told them about the conversation with Carol and Mackenzie. They were still mad at them for me, but were glad it was over without another coffee spill. I told them about the message I had received, and they laughed at my courageous assumption, agreeing that he must be a petty and bad lover. We talked and laughed some more. I felt good knowing that I had their love. I told them that I would be heading out early in the morning and would be home in the afternoon. I said goodbye and went to bed. My journey home was easy, and I love that I now called Bathurst home because my home is where Melody and Harmony were, the rest was just decoration. Our reunion that evening was wonderful, and I made sure the girls were happy. They both walked with a slight limp the next day at work. A little after lunch, I was sitting and reading a couple of reports on the results of the last few days when Sally came and sat down in my office. Well, she asked. Well? I raised an eyebrow. This is true, she asked. What exactly? I answered, guessing that this wasn't a work issue. Over the past few months, Sally and I had developed a professional friendship. We laughed, joked, and got along well. Is it true that you are dating Melody and Harmony at the same time, and that you are the reason why Melody is walking strangely today? She asked with a huge smile on her face. I smiled back. So what if that's true? I asked, trying to keep any hint of emotion from my face, even trying to look a little upset. She lost her smile. Oh, I'm sorry, Terry. I didn't mean to. I laughed. Look, Sally, it's going to come out one way or another. And yes, I'm dating both twins at the same time. As for the strange gait, let's just say I've been away for several days, and Harmony is walking just as strangely today as Melody. Sally's eyes almost bulged. Is it true? Is it true? I laughed. Wow, just wow. I never would have thought. Oh, sorry, Terry, she stammered. I laughed again. It's okay, Sally. We've only been dating for a few months. Although, I think there was a connection between the three of us from the very beginning. If you had told me a year ago that I'd be dating two identical twins, I would have laughed you out of the room. We talked for a few more minutes before Melody poked her head in the door, hearing us laugh. "What are you talking about?" she asked, smiling. "Actually, about you," I smiled at her. "Really, about me?" she asked. "Well," Sally said with a sly tone in her voice, "Terry is going to talk to my boyfriend and tell him how to make me walk like Harmony and you today." She laughed, and Melody blushed. Then my girlfriend looked at me with lust in her eyes. "It's easy, Sally. Just make sure he loves you enough that you want to feel him have you to the moon and back." Sally was drinking water and almost spit it all out on both of us. "4 times? Is that twice each?" she asked, incredulously. "No, Terry," Melody looked at me appraisingly. "Damn, Terry. I wouldn't have thought." I blushed slightly, a little embarrassed, but laughed again. "I wouldn't have thought so either, Sally. I never had that kind of stamina in my previous marriage. I think it's something the girls put in my water." It was nice that Sally, and ultimately most of the people at Dilat, didn't judge me for dating both of the company owner's daughters. Instead, most of the guys looked at me with a well-done look. My conversation with Sally must have gone wrong because the girls in the office started looking at me like I was a prize bull at a fair. There was also a slight change in the way everyone treated Melody in the office. She had always been William's daughter, but now she was my girlfriend. We always behaved professionally at work, of course. Sometimes, an innocent kiss could be stolen, but one way or another, everyone knew, and for the most part, respected, that I was dating both Melody and Harmony. The same thing happened when Harmony visited the office. The first time I sat in the cafeteria with both girls, we attracted a lot of stares. However, Sally also came and sat with us, and it soon became the norm that I was dating 2 girls at the same time. It also helped that I continued to excel in my role as quality manager. I pushed where I could and worked with the team to continue making small changes to our processes to maintain quality and make us more efficient. For more than 3 months, my life was perfect. I had a great job, loving girlfriends who took care of me more nights than not, if you know what I mean. I was seriously in love with Melody and Harmony and couldn't imagine my future without them. Most people in the office, and even in the city where we often ate and hung out, were used to seeing the 3 of us together. Sometimes we came across older women who would throw harsh words at us, but we were never offended. I once bought coffee for an old lady who insulted us, and it confused her. She later came and sat with us, and by the end of the day, she was very apologetic about her initial opinion. She told us some juicy stories about her youth when she was dating 4 guys at once. So, you see, you never know. Don't judge. The old lady, Betty, invited the 3 of us to her church to meet their congregation in a few weeks. We smiled at her but didn't promise anything. Mom had another procedure for cancer and felt fine. I didn't go to Mond, but Melody, Harmony, and I spent a lot of time on video calls with Mom and Dad. We also filed an initial claim against Dr. Stephen Morrison, known as Doctor, in the hospital, along with a video I had taken outside the Mond Central Cafe that day. Kim managed to obtain witness statements confirming the conversation, and the Morrison couple was asked not to return to the cafe. So far, nothing has happened other than filing the lawsuit. Kim advised that since there was no immediate physical threat and I was in another city, it could take up to 6 months before the case goes to trial. Mond Hospital admitted the claim but has so far said nothing about disciplinary action or a defense for Dr. Kim suggested that we wait for the case to be heard by the court and then take action in accordance with the court's decision. Apparently, he was a talented surgeon, so I figured the hospital wasn't going to let him go until they had to. This way, they could continue to use his services. It was Saturday afternoon. Melody, Harmony, and I were sitting in the living room putting together one of those huge, multifaceted puzzles, you know, the ones with 10,000 pieces and the same image on both sides, but from different angles. Yes, it's difficult. We were having fun doing this and discussing the possibility of Betty going to church when I got a call from Kim. "Hey, little sister, do you love your little brother?" I asked, picking up the phone in a cheerful tone. Terry, her tone immediately changed, and my mood shifted with it. "Is everything okay?" I asked, concerned. "No, Terry, it's Mom. She was taken to the hospital with chest pains." I could sense the worry in her voice. Lost? Lost, okay? Okay, wait. I'll put you on speaker. The girls are here with me. I quickly activated the speakerphone, and the girls gathered around me, forgetting about the puzzle. Kim cleared her throat and blew her nose. Okay, team, here's what I know. A couple of hours ago, Mom started feeling ill, and then severe chest pains began. They called her doctor, and he recommended she go to the hospital. Do you know if there was pain when breathing or below the diaphragm? Harmony asked, slipping into medical mode. Sorry, Harmony, I don't know, Kim replied, starting to cry. She was days away from giving birth to her first child, and it was taking a toll on her. It's okay, Kim, I reassured her. I assume Dad is with her? Yes, but Terry, I don't know what to do. I mean, that's my mom, she cried. I wanted to jump through the phone and hug my big sister, but I saw the compassion in the eyes of my girls. Kim, I'll make a few calls and come over to be with Mom, Dad, and you. I have a few days off, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'll take the week off, I said, trying to ease her anxiety. We talked for a few more minutes, then ended the call. I quickly dialed William, who was having lunch with Martha and friends, to make sure I could take a week off. Once he approved, I called Sally to confirm she could cover for me, and then I went to pack my bag. A few minutes later, my girls entered the room. Terry, Melody began. Harmony is coming with you. I looked at them. Harmony nodded, then left the room. A minute later, she returned with a bag and started getting ready with me while Melody came over, hugged me, and kissed me. We talked, Melody said, and although I want to go with you, we have a new supplier this week, so I need to be in the office. But Harmony can go and take care of Josephine and you. I almost moved automatically, but at that moment, I felt only love from my girls as I looked at Harmony, determinedly getting ready, and then at my precious Melody. I looked into her eyes and realized how much it hurt her that she couldn't come with us, but she knew that I needed to go, and she sent Harmony with me. What I liked most was that there wasn't a drop of jealousy in her eyes. Instead, there was only concern for me and my mother. I grabbed her chin and pulled her toward me for a kiss, feeling her melt in my arms. Then she pulled away. Okay, big boy, you need to get ready, she said seriously. I'm sure Josephine will be fine, but you and Harmony need to go. She bit her lip as she looked at me. I love you, Terry. We packed clothes and essentials for the next 20 minutes, then got my truck ready for the trip. After exchanging hugs from me and Harmony to Melody, we set out on the long drive from BST to Mond. Although the mood was gloomy most of the way, this was the first trip I had company on. Harmony called work and arranged a week's vacation. Before we were an hour away, we kept Melody in touch most of the time, and both of us kept me from thinking too much about the upcoming hospital visit. What I remember most vividly is that Harmony's hand was always touching me, letting me know that she sympathized and that she was there for me. We arrived in Mond in the evening. The road was fast, and we went straight to the hospital. Unfortunately, this was the same hospital where Dr. Name worked. I was hoping he wasn't working, and since we were in a completely different department, there was little chance of bumping into him. Harmony called Dad and found out where Mom was. We parked and were soon sitting with Mom and Dad. Mom looked worried but didn't feel much pain after receiving hugs from both parents. We sat down. Harmony picked up the card at the head of her mother's bed and looked at it. Harmony nodded several times and smiled at my mother. They seem to be taking good care of you, Josephine. Your vital signs are normal, and the tests they did should show if there's anything to worry about. Well, they're giving me pretty strong painkillers, so I don't feel bad right now, Mom answered. The doctor previously told my oncologist what was going on and hopes that I can go home if everything is okay. I smiled. That's great, Mom. Harmony and I are here for the whole week, so whatever you need, we're here for you. Dad intervened. Thank you, son. You and Harmony can stay with us. Will Melody come and visit us, too? I felt a slight smile on my dad's face. Over the past few months, Dad and Melody had become a little closer, and the awkwardness of me dating two women, let alone identical twins, had given way to a jocular attitude and even a sense of paternal pride. "Sorry, John," Harmony replied. "Melody couldn't leave this time, but we promise she'll be able to visit you with our man soon." We talked and even video chatted with Melody, William, and Martha from home in BST for the next half hour, but it was almost the end of visiting time, so we said goodbye, got hugs from Mom and Dad, and headed to their house. Dad told us he arrived around 1 a.m. and would sleep until late morning, calling us when he woke up. So we moved into the guest bedroom. On the way to our parents' house, we called Kim and talked to her and Paul for a few minutes, telling her that we had already visited our mother and were heading to our parents' house. We agreed on breakfast the next day with Kim, said goodbye, and arrived at our parents' house. I have a spare key for emergencies, so we went in, made our bed, and took a shower. Unfortunately, the shower was small, so we took turns using it. Then we went to bed and watched a video while I called Melody. She was already in bed when she answered the phone. "How are you guys?" Melody asked as I held the phone, and Harmony pressed herself close to me so we were both in the frame. "Okay, Melody, we're at John and Josephine's, and we're cozy. Our big macho man is fine, but I feel like he's missing you," said Harmony. "Oh, Melody," I make a sound, my eyes on the screen focused on hers. "Terry, I love you, and I wish I could be there with you too." "I miss you too, darling. I don't feel complete without you here with us," I answered. "Harmony, can you take care of Terry for me? You know our man, he'll need a lot of extra love from you without me around." "You know I will, Melody, but right now I think we all need some sleep. It's been a long road. Can we call you in the morning before you go to work?" Harmony asked. "Yes, but first, kiss Terry for me," Melody said. Harmony leaned over and kissed me. "This is from my sister." "She loves you very much," Harmony said, giggling as I heard Melody's cheerful laughter. I looked at the screen again. "Melody, I love you too." "Thank you, our dear. See you in the morning." She said goodbye and hung up. I exchanged kisses with Harmony, we hugged, and then fell asleep. We were woken up by a call on Harmony's phone. Melody had video called us. "Wake up, guys," was her cheerful answer when Harmony handed me the phone. "Terry, you didn't pick up your phone, so I had to call Harmony." "Sorry, honey, it must have been on silent." "It's okay, our dear," she said, using the term the girls used for me. "I just needed you to watch me get up." Suddenly, there was a lot of movement, and I saw the beautiful redhead, my Melody, giving us a show. She placed the phone at the foot of the bed and began stretching and yawning. Then she rubbed her ribs to seduce me. She pulled the covers off and slipped out of bed, the camera showing me her gorgeous thighs and butt. Now it was Melody's turn to giggle. I watched as Melody applied her makeup in front of the mirror. The phone sat on the shelf, giving me a perfect view of her chest and face while she applied blush, eyeliner, and lipstick. She raised her eyebrow, readying her blush, and looked at me through the camera. Melody spent the next few minutes talking to me. We talked for a few more minutes while Melody got dressed, and I got some time alone with her via video while Harmony went to the bathroom for her morning routine. We exchanged declarations of love, and I handed the phone back to Harmony so she could talk to her sister while I went to the bathroom. Dad left a note saying he got back around 1 a.m. and would sleep until late morning, calling us when he woke up. So we got dressed and headed into town for breakfast with Kim. "Hey, Mommy, how is my future nephew doing today?" I asked, sitting down across the table from Kim after hugging her. "Not too bad for lugging around an organic mass that feels like an overinflated beach ball that won't stop tap dancing on my bladder," she grinned back, tapping her pregnant belly. "I swear, when he's born, he'll do household chores until he's 20 years old for the discomfort he's causing me now." Kim thought her first child would be a boy, but Paul thought it was a girl. The rest of us tried to stay away, eagerly awaiting the arrival of our new nephew. We laughed and exchanged jokes for a few minutes. Harmony asked a few questions about Kim's well-being. My girlfriend had always been interested in everything related to medicine, being a nurse. When the waiter arrived, I ordered a cappuccino and a breakfast roll, while Harmony ordered a semi-strong latte and scrambled eggs on rye bread. Kim just stared at us. "What?" I asked as the waiter left to place his order. What would you order if Melody were here with us? Kim asked with a smile on her face. Easy. Cappuccino and eggs and bacon, no toast but hash browns on the side. I smiled at my sister. Ha, pecked came her answer. She laughed in my face. For the next hour, we sat and discussed everything from Mom's cancer and Kim's upcoming birth to how I was doing with Melody and Harmony. We even talked a little about Carol and Mackenzie. I finished my coffee, thinking about my former family, and realized that most of my anger towards them had dissipated since our last conversation. When it came to Carol, I realized that I didn't hate her, but I didn't care what happened to her. Thinking about Mackenzie, I felt like I still had some love inside me, but I was confused to see her alternate between being in mode with Steven and then being remorseful the next day. I just wasn't sure what might happen to her in the future. Had I lost our relationship forever? A penny for your thoughts, little brother, Kim asked softly after the silence stretched for a few moments longer. He's thinking about Mackenzie, Harmony replied. How do you know? Asked Kim. When he thinks about Carol, as he did just moments ago, his eyes go blank and his mouth tightens into a line. When he thinks about Mackenzie, his eyes droop, and he takes on the look of a lost puppy. It's hard to see sometimes, but Melody and I have come to this conclusion over the last year. I smiled and leaned down to kiss her. This is why I love you and your sister so much, I answered. That's so sweet, Kim looked at us. My sister loved to make fun of me, but there was always a huge amount of love hidden behind it. If only Paul could guess my moods so easily, she stopped mid-sentence. Harmony and I stopped looking at each other and looked at Kim. Kim? I asked. She had a strange expression on her face, somewhere between surprise and embarrassment. She looked confused for a moment, looking at us, and then we heard a sound like running water. Crap, she make a sound. My water broke. Everyone in the cafe helped us for the next 40 minutes while we waited for the ambulance to arrive to take Kim to the hospital. By the time they arrived, Kim was having mild contractions, but they were fairly infrequent. We called Paul, and he was on his way to the hospital, meeting the ambulance there. Harmony and I followed her in my truck. The staff were amazing and refused to let us pay for the food. We promised that we would return once Kim and her baby were safely born. Kim was in labor for almost 19 hours, and after what seemed, from the perspective of the people in the waiting room, like quite a lot of swearing from my sister, little Candace, my first niece, was born. Despite the long labor, Kim was doing well, and my niece was absolutely perfect. I had the honor of being the 5th person to hold her in my arms. Mom and Dad came down from the oncology ward just as their 2nd grandchild was born, and we were all in awe when Kim introduced Aunt Harmony and demanded that I video call Aunt Melody while Harmony babysat my niece. As I looked at Harmony holding Candace, my mind flashed back to the conversation in which Melody and Harmony told me they wanted children with me. The moment I looked at Harmony holding Candace, I knew I might have more children. Melody, watching Harmony on the back camera of my phone with my face in the small inset from the front camera, must have noticed something. Terry, can you call me back? She asked. Of course, dear, I ended the call and informed everyone that I would go outside to call Melody in private. Harmony gave me a meaningful look and whispered, I love you, while rocking and singing to my niece. I called Melody. Hey, love, what's wrong? I asked. I felt a pause. This was serious. Terry, are you okay? Okay, well, great actually. Mom is recovering and may be home soon. Kim and Paul now have little Candace, and I have you too. I smiled. Why are you asking? Well, our love. I saw that look you gave Harmony when she was holding Candace, and I laughed. Do you want to know if I'm ready to have children with you? I felt her blush as she spoke. Yes, well, with both of you and with Harmony too. It was in your eyes just now, and I saw it in Harmony's too, and that kind of turned me on, she admitted. I laughed. Melody, darling, to be honest, I've really thought about having kids with both of you, and it made me feel great. Would it be okay if the 3 of us had a serious conversation about this next week when we get back to your house? I'm not saying we need to try next week, but I want us to have some kind of plan. Melody screamed with joy. Oh God, yes. Terry, yes. You have no idea how much I want both Harmony and I to have children with you. I think she almost fainted with happiness. Watching Harmony just now, I think I understand. I smiled. The thought of kids with my girls became more and more appealing to me, and to be honest, it had been that way since they first mentioned it. Listen, Melody, we'll be here for a couple more nights, and then we'll come back to your house. Can you hold out until then? I miss you so much, Terry, but yeah, just promise me you'll give me an extra big hug when you get home. Agreed, Beauty, I answered. Great, now get me back inside and give the phone to my sister. I returned to the room, and Harmony had just finished handing Candace back to Kim for feeding. Harmony held out her hand for the phone, and a minute later, she left the room. Kim looked at me with a raised eyebrow as she helped little Candace latch onto her breast. What a henpecked guy, she said, and I laughed. The next couple of days were wonderful. The oncology and maternity wards were only a 5-minute walk away. Harmony and I spent a few hours with Mom this morning. She was looking forward to returning home. Changing medications helped manage the pain, and the doctors received new information after several scans in preparation for the next treatment in the coming months. Mom was full of energy and looked forward to being a grandmother again. Now don't wait too long before you give me more grandchildren with your beautiful girlfriends, Terry, she smiled at me as I blushed. Harmony grabbed my hand and wrapped it around her waist. You can be sure of it, Josephine, she said, and my blush deepened. All three of us are just about to talk about this. I changed the subject and we talked for a few more minutes about getting home and having a nice family dinner for the four of us before we left tomorrow. Harmony, could you leave Terry and me for a few minutes? Mom asked. Of course, Josephine, Harmony replied. After Harmony left, my mother looked at me with a serious expression from her hospital bed. Terry, I know how much you love these girls, and am I right in thinking that there will never be any reconciliation with Carol? No, Mom, there will never be any chance of reconciliation with Carol. And yes, I really love these girls a lot. I know it's a weird relationship, but I really can't imagine one without the other. And they've never shown the slightest bit of jealousy. She smiled and nodded, accepting what I said about Carol and the girls. I see it, and I see how much they love you, but I have to ask. If something happens to me, if we can't beat this cancer, I want you three, Kim and Paul, to take care of your father. Mom was crying now, and I hugged her tightly. For a few minutes, we just held each other, like mother and son. Mom, I don't want you to leave, but you have my promise, we will all take care of Dad. Thank you, Terry. You have no idea how much this means to me. No problem, Mom. Say, Harmony and I were going to visit Kim, so why don't you come with us? We can go back and finish packing before heading home. I held her hands, appealing to her maternal instincts. I'm sure Grandma could hold Candace for a few minutes. She hesitated, then smiled. Okay, Terry, you win. I'll go with you. We walked out, and Harmony gave me a questioning look. I shook my head slightly, indicating that we would talk later, and told her that Mom was coming with us to see Kim. If you've ever walked through a hospital, you know that the phrase rabbit hole or maze applies. There are corridors, offices, and wards throughout, but everything has a purpose, from storing medical supplies to providing places for staff to rest or work. Over the past few days, Harmony and I had found the best route between the oncology and maternity wards and went back and forth frequently. Today, Mom and Harmony walked a few steps ahead of me, talking about everything and nothing. I smiled, seeing my mom with one of the two women I loved, and it warmed my heart. I also had to admit that Mom never spoke as freely to Carol as she did to Harmony or Melody. Of course, she talked to my ex-wife a lot, they were polite, but Mom never just walked around and talked about everything and anything like she did now with Harmony. It made me appreciate even more how much Melody and Harmony had changed my life over the past year, but also how my parents and sister had so readily accepted them. It was also surprising how the local community around BST accepted our unorthodox relationship with such relative ease. I watched as my mother held Harmony's hand, chatting about her grandchildren, and I smiled again. Over the past couple of years, I had gone from a happy family to a depressed husband and father, to a heroic savior, and then to the lover of two incredibly beautiful sisters, for whom I would sacrifice my life in an instant without hesitation. But there was also a high probability that Mom would beat cancer and live to see the additional grandchildren I was now considering giving her. As we approached the corner where the girls had turned, I stopped. Something seemed wrong to me. There was some movement behind me, but it felt aggressive and ominous. I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end. If you've ever been outside at night without a light, and something moves in the bushes, you know the feeling. It's a weird fight or flight reflex. I thought it was impossible to experience such a feeling here, in the hospital, but I felt it very strongly. All of these thoughts flashed through my head in just a few seconds, and as I turned to look back to understand why I was feeling anxious, pain flared up in my left shoulder, a sharp pain as if something had pricked me. Then, not even a moment later, a second pain appeared just inches from the first. As I turned further, I saw the idiot himself, Dr. Stephen Morrison, standing there with a look of triumph on his face. "I told you, you loser, not to show up in my hospital, otherwise you'll never leave here," he shouted at me. "What? What did you do?" I asked, my now shaking hand reaching to my back, pulling out 2 syringes that had basically been injected into my body. He just grinned at me in response. From the moment I first met this man, no, let's go even further back, to the evening when I walked into my former home and found my wife and daughter gone, stolen from me with a Dear John note and a set of documents that ruined my life, I was angry at this piece of. He stole my wife, took my daughter for himself, and mocked me about it right in front of my eyes. At every turn, he positioned himself as some kind of alpha male, boasting that he was a doctor and a surgeon. Every time I met this idiot, he mocked me, and every time, I fought to control my anger and rage. Finally, in one of the rare conversations after our divorce, Carol implied that he felt threatened by me, thinking I might take her back. Looking at this mean, smug freak in front of me, I could understand why. When you think of doctors and surgeons in TV shows, you always see good-looking actors, confident, acting with purpose and meaning. They are always calm under pressure, making life-changing decisions that make you root for them as they save a patient. But when I looked at the smug, victorious face of this idiot in front of me, I didn't see any of that. I didn't understand how this man could even be a doctor, let alone a surgeon with any kind of reputation. He was fat, balding, and even through his smile, which came from the fact that he had just injected me with something, he was a sweaty, unhealthy piece of. "What did you inject me with, you damn piece of?" I yelled at the little freak. I looked at the 2 syringes in my hands. Shoo, Terry, my friend. You should watch your language in your final moments, he laughed, taking a step back. It won't be long before you fall asleep because of the mixture I gave you. He smiled a sinister smile. But you can rest assured that you'll never wake up again, and I won't have to worry about Carol wanting to come back to you because you'll be dead. At that moment, Harmony returned around the corner at a run, with my mother not lagging behind. They both stopped. I screamed, and all my anger, all my pain, all my feelings of betrayal came out. I was no longer going to sit idly by. I was no longer going to tolerate this freak interfering in my life. "You smug piece of," I shouted. "I told you I want nothing to do with any of these backstabbing. I didn't want anything to do with you, you slimy fat idiot, not even once." I started to feel a tingling sensation in my fingers. Taking a step toward the idiot, I clenched my fists. He took a step back but looked at me again. His eyes widened and then he found his stupid grin when he saw how Harmony was holding my mother. "Well, Terry, my boy, I have to admit, she looks much better than Carol. I think you can die happy now, knowing that as soon as you're gone, I'll take your new love and her in a way that will give her the pleasure you could never give. Get the hell out." I screamed again and rushed at him. He took another scared step back, and I hit him with a right hook, putting all my strength, all my anger, all the pain this piece of garbage had caused in me into his jaw. My fist hit the target, and he fell. His eyes rolled back into his head, he groaned as he passed out, and the smell of his urine filled my nose. I spat on the floor at his feet, and staggered. Whatever he injected into me worked quickly. Harmony was nearby, instantly wrapping her arms around me. Terry, her eyes peered into mine, and she saw that I was quickly losing focus. The immediate threat was removed, my anger quickly fading. He injected me with this. I handed her the 2 syringes. "This is doctor, and you remember how I told you that he said I wouldn't leave here if I came to his hospital? Well, I don't think he'll get out of here now either." Harmony knelt down next to me, pinning us against the wall opposite the doctor, and pressed the black button on the wall. Alarms began to sound throughout the corridor. She took my face in her hands and looked deeply into my eyes. "Terry, stay with me as long as you can, honey. Every minute you stay conscious gives us a better chance of helping you." I nodded. A halo developed around Harmony. The glow radiated from her, even as the rest of the world blurred. I smiled. "You are beautiful, Harmony. I love you and Melody so much." "I know, honey. We love you very much too." 3 guards came running, the doctor close behind. Harmony handed them the syringes. "That's stupid," she said, pointing at the doctor, "injected my boyfriend with one of these, telling him he would kill him. I need you to figure out what's in them quickly so we can save my man." I looked at Harmony, my body feeling tired. The edges of my vision blurred, and then I heard the phone ring. Quick words came out, but I lost focus for a few moments, then felt the cold touch of plastic against my ear as Harmony brought the phone to my ear. "Terry, honey, what's going on?" Melody's voice started talking on the phone. I looked at Harmony, her amazing green eyes I could be lost in forever without taking another breath. "I hit this idiot. I mean the big idiot, that doctor." I started to lose myself, confusing my words. Harmony smiled. She told me, "Honey, Terry, are you listening?" Her voice was panicked, and we all knew I was fading. "Yes," I muttered. "Darling, we need you to stay with us. We need you," our dear Melody cried through the phone. Looking at Harmony, she also sobbed openly. "Terry, amazing sweet Terry, please don't go. We're not ready to lose you so soon after we found you." Harmony whispered, "Shoo, tired." By this time, even more doctors had gathered around Harmony and me. Finally, she was forced to stand aside, taking the phone with her. A couple of guards lifted me onto a waiting cart at the doctor's direction, and I saw my mom, hugging and crying. Harmony and I shared one last moment of clarity when our eyes met. "I love you," I whispered. She returned the gesture. "We love you too," she answered. They started moving me quickly along the corridor. I felt them pushing me faster, so I closed my eyes. Sight and sound gradually faded as the pulls completed their work. I was loved, and I had found happiness. I was not alone. But as my consciousness faded into nothingness, I briefly wondered if I would ever wake up again. What do you think of our story today? In my opinion, the situation is quite unusual, but the husband copes with all the difficulties, and that's what I liked. What's your impression? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next video.